97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Well, Andrew Salciunas is somewhere in the air over Europe, we guess right now. John Kincade is back from Las Vegas, but all due respect to the two guys on this show, the biggest move that we're hearing about is Paul George coming West Coast to East Coast. We got news, an hour and a half ago? He's going to be a Sixer. We're going to break down everything you need to know about the contract and where this puts the Sixers in a hugely impactful part of this Joel Embiid era. It's Kincade and Salciunas right here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
This is Kincade and Salciunas.
Stars in cities, especially like Philadelphia, they are always on the map, and we should expect more winning out of them.
And we'll go to the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. I am a believer that your best player, I think there is also a responsibility as the team spokesperson.
Kincade and Salciunas. John Kincade, Andrew Salciunas.
97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
And a good Monday morning to everybody out there in the greater Philadelphia area. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, who is on vacation in the homeland, Lithuania. And to my left, of course, John Kincade back from Las Vegas. Johnny, how we feeling this morning?
Got off the tarmac last night after sitting for 3 hours and 5 minutes with a view of the terminal. A crazy night at PHL last night. Anybody who landed last night or was trying to take off. Andrew had not taken off. I landed before he ever took off. I'm on the tarmac for over 2 hours. He's still at his gate. Jeez. So the show was in proximity.
Right.
I said,
close.
If you came down to the tarmac, we could have done an edition of the show last night.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way. But a lot of people were very patient last night, and that's the way to do it.
Yes.
I mean, it was absurd.
Yeah,
so,
I can't imagine.
But then we wake up to this.
Right?
See, this makes it great because working on like 3.5 hours sleep, the idea of big Sixers news breaking on July 1st, I'm all in.
And if you're wondering what this is, maybe you haven't seen the news. I don't think we're the only ones tired in the city of Philadelphia today because there were people up all night for Paul George watch. We heard that there was going to be a meeting between the Sixers brass and Paul George late Sunday night out in L.A. Now, I don't think that 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. Eastern time counts as late Sunday night.
The word broke at 12:32 a.m.
Yes.
So I mean, for out in California.
So
that's not bad. And by the way, applause to the Sixers and Daryl Morey for bringing the party to him.
Yes, that's the way to do it.
Yes, be there. If you love somebody, show them you love them.
Yeah, and the Sixers we've known this since the offseason really got going. The Sixers have had their eyes set on Paul George. There was a point last week where we were like, okay, well, this doesn't look like it's going to happen. There's all these reports about him wanting to stay in California. It was up in the air. And then as free agency started to open, the legal tampering period opens today, you're looking at a situation where, well, this guy's going here and this guy's going there. And the chips just fell in a way that looked like Paul George to the Sixers was a real possibility. So a lot of people stayed up through the night last night, and you end up with the Woj bomb early this morning on the East Coast that Paul George is going to be signing a 4-year, $212 million max contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. So we'll be taking your immediate reaction to that on the phone lines, the text lines today. When stuff breaks, we don't get to break news like this very often, Johnny.
Tyrone Johnson usually has the embargo on breaking news here. Like Ty has embargoed it. He gets to do it all the time. Well, guess what? We get to do this one.
Yes.
Which is good.
This is ours.
Thank you, Daryl Morey. Thank you for looking out for us once in a while.
You want me to hit the sounder to make it that much more?
No.
All right.
No, we appreciate. I had to listen to ESPN overnights, not have the story for a couple hours, so that was getting on my nerves.
Yeah.
It's great. It's an exciting day.
And we'll get national reaction throughout the day, but I want your reaction. 610-632-0975 is the phone line to call in, to text in. I'm sure stuff will be buzzing. I heard over the weekends it was big here just with the thought that Paul George could be coming. Now that you see the contract, know the move is happening, what's your immediate reaction to the Paul George news? And the biggest question is, was this the right move for the Philadelphia 76ers?
Well, the one thing I would start with is this. The Sixers were never going to flip Joel Embiid, try to get a bunch of assets and start a rebuild. So to me, anybody who says, no, what the right move would have been is doing that. Look, I may agree with them, but that was never happening. So
Right.
let's talk about reality. And honestly, you got the best player available.
You did.
You got the best player available. And to me, I think it's as simple as saying you got Paul George where you had Tobias Harris.
Right.
And to me, that's at its base, that's the simplest thing, Connor.
It's an incredible upgrade. Like, listen to this resume. I know what people think about when you hear Paul George. You hear about a guy that just turned 34. The injury problems are well documented. Doesn't have a ring. Hasn't been able to be the guy to get a franchise over the hump in his previous stops, whether it's L.A., OKC,
Right.
Indiana originally. But last year averages over 22 points a game, 5 boards, 3.5 assists. He's been on the all-defensive team 4 times. He's been an all-star 9 times. He's been a 6-time all-NBA player. This is a bona fide superstar caliber name that you're bringing in here. And now I know where he's at in his career.
Yeah, you're not getting him in his prime.
But you're getting a guy who had that done and still has that in small spurts. And now you have to cross your fingers and hope that he is healthy enough to make this dream a reality this year and the 3 years after this year for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Every guy who will want to call up and poo-poo on this, or lady, that may want to do that, remind yourself this. You had Tobias Harris in a max contract slot. You took a max contract slot and you gave it to Paul George. You're better. You're better because of that. No matter what you may think, and believe me, I have a lot of the things, and we'll get into it.
Yes, we will.
I have a lot of the doubts about what Paul George is at 34 compared to what, he could have been 4 years ago, 5 years ago. But if I just say to myself, focus on the basic thing, Paul George for Tobias Harris, there isn't a general manager that would make that trade. There's not one. There's not one. The guy who has Paul George is going to laugh at you when you call and offer that. So to me, you got to look at it as a win.
Right.
You have to look at it as a win because even if you think they should have started a rebuild, because they were never doing that.
No, they
Like, you
weren't.
can't do that.
And we had that conversation about the benefits of it, but we knew where the organization stood.
Right.
The talent level of Joel Embiid is too much to pass up for a team that still believes they're in contention.
No question.
We are going to have the conversation, too, today, because that's another part of this. Where does it put the Sixers in the Eastern Conference hierarchy? And I know there's still a lot of moves to be made. We have some other moves to talk about that we'll get into as well.
Exactly.
Eric
We have a
Gordon's gonna be
busy night.
Sixer. Kelly Oubre is going to be a Sixer. Andre Drummond, Kelly Oubre is coming back.
Right.
Andre Drummond returns to the Sixers. It's been a heck of a day and a half with all of this news we've got, and we've got your first reaction to it on these airwaves right here. Again, 610-632-0975 is the phone number.
I'm wondering when we hear the Sixers lineup being announced, next year, whether they're going to be playing the theme to the Golden Girls under it. Because I swear to you,
Yeah.
they're going to be creakety. They're
That
gonna
was
be
your big concern, right? The age?
Yeah.
And it's being
I mean,
realized, but
I've seen it happen before, and I've seen it happen here.
yeah.
Getting guys that are on the end of their career, and I'm fully expecting we're going to have more guys at the end of the career joining us. I'm expecting that the Sixers could have the oldest roster in the NBA.
It's possible.
By the time Daryl Morey puts this whole thing together, the Sixers, the little patch on the jersey, it may be by a place for mom. Like, they may actually have that. And by the way, why is it not a place for dad?
I don't know.
Like, I'm a dad. Like, why the hell don't we have a place for dad? Like, where it's like a sports bar for, like, old men. But that's
a
another
place
thing.
for dad would just be a garage with a lawn chair and a TV in it. That's
Yeah,
not
I
for
mean,
Wild
I mean,
Wings.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. I'm looking at it, though, as, again, I'm trying to set aside the critical mind today and say, you improve this team, they're better. And to me, I always look at it as, are you better? Are you better? And I believe there were other moves that make them better,
Yes.
that make them a better team.
But here's the way you also have to evaluate it. And you alluded to this already about, is this the best possible move the Sixers could have made? I mean, when you look at an offseason where all the pieces fell the way they did and Paul George was the best available player that you did not have to trade assets for.
Yes.
And whatever you feel about the age, the injury history, he's a very talented basketball player when available still. I can only grade Daryl Morey and the Sixers on what they possibly could have done. if this is good enough to get them over the hump, is irrelevant to the evaluation of this move in a vacuum.
I think what we have to do, though, is we have to evaluate, and you and Tom are both going to have to be on the record with this, is that, to me, getting over the hump is not just getting to the conference finals. Like, I mean, if this is all being done to cosmetically do something that the Atlanta Hawks have done multiple times in the past decade, that the Indiana Pacers did just this year, that means jack plap to me. It doesn't mean It doesn't mean anything to me. Like to say, well, now they can get to a conference finals. BS.
My only argument would be is it depends, because Boston is a team that is still very, very talented. They're not going anywhere.
And they're young.
So if you get to the conference finals and you play like a knockdown, drag-out series against the Celtics, and you come up short.
No, but nobody should criticize it.
Exactly. That's why
it's fair.
Conference finals may be enough depending on how it works. But we're not making this move. Like, the Sixers did not sign Paul George early this morning to say, we'd like to make it to the Final Four teams. This is a move to try and find yourself an NBA title, and I think it's as close as they could have gotten given the situation this offseason.
I think that, too, I celebrated when I heard the news, because I passed out around, I guess I was out by whatever, because my wife wrote me a little love note in the counter, she said, my head hit the pillow and I was out. When I woke up to the news that Brandon Ingram, that you didn't go and give your draft assets up to get Brandon Ingram in here. I did not want him here. I did not think it was a great fit. So to me, that's another one of the things, and I literally have to make my positive-negative list up of you saved all your draft assets.
Yeah, you did.
So to me, this is to keep me focused, Connor. This keeps me focused on trying to be positive about it, because though it may not be what I wanted, there's no argument the Sixers are a better team this morning.
No, absolutely not.
There's no argument that the 2024-25 Sixers are going to be better on opening night than the 2023-24 Sixers.
And there's going to be a conversation we get into later on in the show as far as this team compared to the 2019 Sixers. Because a lot of people look at that team as the most talented when you look at top-heavy.
Yes.
They weren't the deepest team, but when you look at top-heavy talent, people call that the most talented team of the Joel Embiid era.
I think no argument that it was.
Well, does this team set up to potentially be better than that team in a way if you look at other moves that could come down the pike? But we're not there yet. We're talking about the Paul George move. 4 years, $212 million max contract. It's going to break down to an annual value of $53 million on average. Now, we'll get into the actual breakdown of the contract, because I think the Sixers did something very smart. You're going to bring up a point as far as the TV deals coming that could make this look
even better,
more palatable. I don't know if you can make paying a 38-year-old $50-some million in the NBA palatable, but it will make it look smarter the way they've even approached this. I have no issues with this Paul George move whatsoever. Just looking at, and you keep bringing it up, it's not just Paul George. It's Paul George in comparison to Tobias Harris.
And again, before and two, I would hope that people can be, because look, I'm a skeptic on this whole thing. So I'm not putting on pom-poms today and shaking them for you and saying it. But you cannot argue. There can be no argument made. You had a max contract slot that you were giving to Tobias Harris for the last few years that you now have Paul George in. You are better. You are better, bottom line. That's it. And I don't care if it's 2.5, 3 years of Paul George. The 2 years that we should hopefully get, are going to be distinctly better as far as an impact of what you got out of Tobias Harris.
Now, if I know anything about our listeners and the people who call and text us every morning, they can argue anything. So
I don't think
argument.
No one is going to argue that. There is no, and you know what? If anybody argues that today, I didn't want to get. First of all, you needed to fill the max slot,
right? Or you lose it.
You don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
So you don't want to lose the opportunity there. So you have to fill the max slot. I'll tell you this: to me, you got Paul George, and that I'm willing to handle that. You had to do it, and more importantly, I always look at an offseason as: are you better here? Are you better there? Are you better here? And we got other stuff going on too, and other names that we're going to talk about. This team is distinctly better than they were when we woke up yesterday morning.
Yes.
This team is decidedly better, not just because they have actual guys under contract now. Not till Saturday.
Right. And I owe you an apology, and I think Andrew Salciunas does as well.
I think we need to get into that.
We will talk about that at some point today. So if you want to hear me come to terms with Johnny being right on something from last week, we will do that. But
just occasionally.
I want to hear from the people what you think about this Paul George move. Are you as excited as John and I are? Because with the cons that you have listed down there, we will go through them.
Right,
in spite of those, there's no reason you shouldn't be excited about this move. This is one of the bigger free agent signings in Sixers franchise history.
No, it is.
It's definitely the biggest of the Joel Embiid era. So if you can't get up for this, I don't know what can get you not believing this team is, they're going to win the finals, but believing this team has a much better shot today than they did yesterday.
And if anybody calls today with the, you guys are just schedule the parade today. That has not been said.
Right.
No one has said it, so don't spin it as such. It's the idea that the idea is to get better in every way that you possibly can. And I'm going to give Daryl Morey a big pat in the back and a huge applause.
Yes.
Because I love the fact that the draft assets weren't touched. I love it.
It's a great point.
That's a big one.
610-632-0975 is the phone number. You can call us. Of course, you can text us. Here's what I want you to do. I know what's going to happen with people this morning because there's a lot of folks out there just like me and you, Johnny, that are going to wake up to this news. And the first thing you always do, right, you go to the group chat.
Yes.
You text your buddies. You text your dad. And you're like, hey, did you see the Paul George news? This is amazing. Put us in that group text. Put us on that mailing list.
That's not a bad idea.
Text us at 610-632-0975.
That's because you usually are the only people have to read it.
Right. Well,
and now Tom does this morning.
Tom Alvord, who's in my seat as I sit in for Andrew Salciunas. We'll get Tom's reaction coming up on the move as well. But, yes, text in and let us know your thoughts. I'm sure we're going to hear plenty of reaction from the Sixers fan base on this. Now, as we dive deeper into the full package that is this signing, part of what you have to do is you have to talk through the moves that did happen for other teams, the other players potentially available, the guys still out there, and say, if it wasn't Paul George, if you have any drawbacks on the Paul George signing, I think there are some realistic ones that should be outweighed by the upside, but who else was it going to be? Was there another option out there? The one name that kept coming up as we got a little bit thinner in the potential options was Brandon Ingram. And I think the end-all, be-all discussion on that was you would have had to move multiple first-round picks to acquire Brandon Ingram.
I think triple. No. Probably two for Ingram.
Yes. And then you'd have to move a player. You might have to move other assets. You would have had to give up assets that you still have in the coffers to make that move. He's a younger player, but if you're going to go out and tell me that Brandon Ingram is guaranteed a better option, even just from a basketball standpoint, than Paul George, I'm going to say that
I don't believe you know I don't believe you know basketball or football, brother.
Yeah.
You don't know basketball.
I think they're relatively close to ability considering age difference at this point.
Do you really?
I do. I think there's a chance that Brandon Ingram on this contract would end up looking better just because you're going to get more of the prime years. And I don't know what Paul George's drop-off is going to be. If injuries continue to be a problem, that's the biggest question mark. If you were getting 29-year-old Paul George, we're dancing in the streets this morning. You're getting 34-year-old Paul George. And he's only getting older, and he's started to have those nagging injuries. So that's why I just say, I could understand people trying to tell me, okay, I would have preferred Brandon Ingram from the keep the window open longer perspective, but from giving up draft picks, you cannot tell me that was the smarter move from the long-term view for this.
Well, I also don't think that I don't think Brandon Ingram will be discussed at the end of his career the same way that Paul George will.
No.
And even though Paul George has yet to have that signature moment, he's not going to be discussed. Brandon Ingram's not that guy. Did not want it. So I'm thrilled on that regard. To me, that was the biggest smile to me. And I've got friends down with the New Orleans Pelicans group down there. And I was just sort of scared away by stuff that I'd heard.
Yeah.
I didn't want him.
I understand that.
And is he a good teammate?
Players
Brandon
are more
Ingram?
than paper, John. It's not
I
just.
understand it.
Yeah, it's not just looking at the basketball reference page and saying Brandon Ingram scores this much and rebounds this much and shoots this much and saying, okay, he's a perfect fit. That's important too. And Paul George is a guy who has played alongside numerous superstars. He's played in tough places to play. Say what you want about the LA fan base and the passion, but basketball-wise, that is a high scrutiny place. Paul George has been around the block. He's a guy who knows what it's like to be on a team with championship-level aspirations. And while he hasn't carried a team there, he also hasn't really been the clear third option.
He's never been the third.
You could
right?
make the argument that with Kawhi and James Harden and him,
I think it was dual twos.
Right.
Dual twos.
But now he's in a spot where the bar has been set so low by his predecessor in Tobias Harris that you just kind of have to go out there and not disappear in spots where they need you. And I don't believe that Paul George is going to do that.
Plus, basketball minds that I've heard that have talked about this move when it was speculated, talked about the fit of Paul George, about how what he brings to the table and how it fits with the Maxi and Embiid combination. I believe this may benefit Tyrese Maxi more than it benefits Joel Embiid.
It's certainly
in a
possible.
Big way. In a big way.
There are a lot of guys on this future team that are going to enjoy having Paul George as their teammate. And I think everybody, as long as he's healthy, and I think everybody should be ecstatic this morning. So we'll get into your reaction coming up. We're also going to talk a little bit about the other deals that got done yesterday. How do they fit with Paul George? And there's a sentiment out there that this could just be the jumping off point for what we've been waiting for what feels like a decade.
Right.
That offseason where every veteran, all those guys that want vet-min contracts to chase a ring, are they going to be looking at Philadelphia? There's certainly still room in the inn for more players to be added. So we'll get into that coming up. I'm Connor Thomas, in for Andrew Salciunas, who's enjoying some time out in Lithuania. John Kincade with me to my left, Tom Alvord on the board. And we're back after this here on Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
the hourly sponsor sound that we have, because this is normally Andrew Salciunas' gig, but he is on vacation. He's over in Europe and Lithuania. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade, the rock of the show. He's always right there.
The rock.
Well, when you don't take off for Vegas or
exactly.
Toronto. You've been jet setting too lately.
Yeah, after a year locked in a house, if any of you could ever relate, imagine a year of house arrest, and now it's like every place that I've wanted to hit, I want to hit.
Yes.
Make sure it's done.
But you wanted to be here this morning, especially with this news breaking that Paul George has agreed to become a member of your Philadelphia 76ers. 4 years, $212 million, a max contract that is going to pay out an average annual value of $53 million a year. We started the show by talking about our initial reaction. Johnny and I are on the same page. Like, you have to be positive about this move. We are going to talk about the realistic potential pitfalls of this.
Yes.
We're going to start the 7 o'clock hour, and John's going to take center stage because I know the criticisms John has of the strategy of having aging star players. And that's still valid this morning. But if you see this signing, where a bona fide superstar has not been traded, you have not given up draft assets, you have not forced him out of a bad situation onto the Philadelphia 76ers, he decided of his own volition to join this team, that should make you very, very excited as a fan of the Sixers.
Yeah, I think that look, there's plenty of time to get out the Charmin if you're a poo-pooer. There's plenty of time. But bottom line is this. You're a better team today. Flat out. And you could not, there's no way you could forfeit the max contract spot.
No.
There's
absolutely
no way.
Not.
There's no way you could afford to say, yeah, we don't care about it. So there wasn't going to be a rebuild by trading Joel Embiid. So take that off the table. You just said today, instead of waiting for at some point that we're going to see the Sixers finally reach their potential, you're now going to see it with Paul George, and you're not going to see it with Tobias Harris. Bottom line, you're better. You're better.
Not just better. I think that makes you substantially better.
Okay,
now,
so you say substantially.
I do, just on a night-to-night basis. I'm not worried with Paul George. If he is on the basketball court, I'm not worried about, could this guy score 4 points in a low-impact game when the Sixers could have really used him.
I would go as far as to say that will never happen.
It would be highly unlikely.
Unless he was hurt.
Right, and that's just
reality
that's just
of the player.
And real quick, even if he does, it's not going to be on 4 field goal attempts when you need him to have 12
yes.
of them, right? Like, you're going to get the shots up. He's not going to shy away. Yes.
Playoff P ain't scared. Regular season P, whatever time of the year PG, he's going to go out there and try to impact a basketball game.
Does PG-13 mean anything to either of you? Does it mean anything to you?
Like the nickname?
Yeah, I mean,
the movie rating?
Like the movie rating.
Yeah.
Does it mean so your parents kept to it?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really remember. I imagine.
Did your parents smuggle you into movies did they take you into movies maybe you shouldn't have seen?
Maybe once or twice, but normally they're pretty good with
Well,
it,
this is one movie I hope every single parent's taking their kid to.
Yes.
Because this is it. This is the Joel Embiid era in a microcosm for the next couple years.
Yeah.
This is it.
That's also part of the conversation is this is kind of your last stand. This is the Sixers Alamo. You are not really looking at a situation, at least with a Joel Embiid-centric team, to have another shot at this. Paul George is going to be here for 4 years.
He is.
And Joel Embiid doesn't have that big of a window as a big man with the injury history we know he has. He's still a great player, but eventually Joel Embiid's time at this level will come to an end. And it will come to an end, I believe, with Paul George as his teammate, just looking at the window.
I had a strength and conditioning guy.
Okay.
The other day at the NHL draft that I was speaking to, used to know him back in the past. He's now working with another franchise. And he's out there for the draft with his team, and I saw him, we're talking and everything. And he goes, well, you having fun talking about, like, the Sixers and the Flyers and all that? I said, yeah. And he goes, one thing with Embiid, because he says, well, what about Embiid? What's he like? And I'm talking to him, and he goes, because everybody talks about his injury history. He also thinks, though, that in the same conversation, people need to talk about wear on the tires.
Yeah.
He thinks there's less wear on the tires.
There is, because he started the game so late.
And
he missed his first 2 seasons.
And this guy studies sports science to a degree that NHL teams would, if he was fired today, he'd be hired by another one tomorrow. He understands he said, as much as people talk about his injury history, he said, you got to talk about tread on the tire. He thinks he's younger, despite what we think. Because I said he's probably got 2 years left of high optimum thing. And he goes, why do you say that? He said, because his wear on his tires is a lot less. He goes, I think you're just assuming injury.
Right.
You can't assume injury.
That's true. Well,
So, but he says
with
you
the
can't, though.
Sixers,
I
you could come
understand.
close.
I understand, but still.
But you're right. And you know what I'm hearing, Tommy? I think I'm hearing John Kincade starting to believe a little bit.
I'm believing that my next Sixers season is going to be more entertaining than the last one.
And guess what? There was a point in this last Sixers season
Where we were all jacked up.
because they were right there with Boston when it came to their matchups. Like, it was early on in the season.
It was early on.
But when you saw Joel Embiid healthy and Tyrese Maxi taking that huge step, there was a point last year where we had conversations. Oh, can this team hang with Boston? And it wasn't a crazy conversation. Now, the end result was nowhere close. But you add a Paul George. You make a couple other moves that we're going to talk about. And you start to have, I think a lot of people in the fan base begrudgingly are saying, man, I can't believe I'm starting to believe in this team this quickly again. But I think people out there are.
Well, competing to win a championship, I'm not here to say that today.
Right.
Competing to say, I think the Sixers are a hell of a lot better than they've been in years.
Yes. You have to take steps.
To me, that's so it's better. So that makes me smile.
Yes.
It makes me smile.
It doesn't just go from first round exit and in ugly fashion when you look at some of the later games in that series to, one move championship
We're a title
contenders.
contender, right.
You have to take steps. Now, could they be? Sure. We could absolutely get to that point with the talent
There could also be a critical
level.
injury to somebody else.
Of course.
Maybe somebody else gets dealt the bad injury card.
Yeah. You never know. You can just put the most talent possible in the cleanest possible way on your team, and that's what the Philadelphia 76ers did early this morning.
They did.
Signing Paul George. So your reaction on the phone line and the text line, 610-632-0975. Would love to have you reach out to us.
A lot of texters already. Is that it?
I'm hearing it's busy on the text line. So we're going to get to that in just a second, but I want to open up the phone lines as well. Let's go to Kenny in Mayfair here. Kenny, you're live here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Hey, good morning, guys. How's everybody?
How can we not be great, Kenny?
Kenny, a lot better than I was on the tarmac last night, I can tell you.
I'm sorry about that, but I'm telling you something. I am fired up this morning. I applaud Daryl Morey. I can't believe. Listen, Paul George as a third option, you got to be joking. He's shooting 43% from threes. If him, Maxi, and Embiid are on the floor and then they do their thing, that's 82 points.
Kenny, who do you think he benefits more, Embiid or Maxi? Because I'm torn on this. I think he maybe benefits Maxi more.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
I'm so excited with that.
Just gives him more room to move, right?
Oh yeah, and you know what, Andre Drummond. I'm so happy he's back. You know, he averages 9.5 rebounds, 17 minutes a game. You know, and we are better than the Knicks, the starting five. Yes.
Wow. So this moment right now, Kenny, this team is better than the New York Knicks starting five.
He says starting five. You're confident of that?
Confident.
Okay.
I need to see more.
Kenny, appreciate the call. Thank you for getting.
I like the
great
optimism.
Energy to get us started.
I like the optimism. That's good.
I think we're going to hear a lot of that today. I really do.
You?
I think that's where we're going to be with this fan base reaction.
Yeah, I think it's going to be too.
John, I'm shocked. Sorry to interrupt. I'm shocked you're as optimistic as you are, and I know you're obviously tempered and you have some concerns, as we all do. But I thought we were going to be fighting you, me and Connor, this entire morning. So I'm proud of you.
I got to tell you. Well, don't be proud of me.
I'm proud of you.
Look, what I'm going to say is this: is that I always pride myself on consistency.
Yes.
And consistency with I always say, does a contract move or a player move or something, the player that they're replacing, are you better? Daryl Morey made the Sixers better. Period.
You can't make an argument.
There's no argument against that.
No.
So to me, anybody who's arguing that today is doing it for clicks, is doing it for attention, is doing it to say, I'm just going to create some sort of a debate and dialogue. We don't do fake crap on this show.
Yeah.
We don't.
Now,
that's not what we're about.
The argument, listen very carefully to what Johnny just said.
Yes.
Are they better?
They're distinct. How about this? I think they're distinctly better.
I agree. But that's not, are they good enough?
No. That's a different argument.
And we will have that discussion today of
where
they stand in the hierarchy in the East.
And another thing, though, Tommy, is that I hate, and Connor knows this, is that today is not the day for the poo-pooer.
Sure.
Like it's okay to be deeply analytic about this. But if you're crapping on this move, I just don't think you understand basketball.
3 hours after it happens.
And I don't consider myself a great basketball mind by any stretch. Of course, we'll talk to Bob Cooney later. A great basketball mind. But the idea, D-Lam will join us.
Yes.
A great basketball mind. I don't consider myself that. But I'm smart enough to know you're distinctly better with Paul George.
Absolutely. Let's take a beat real quick and tell the
Sure.
people, because we're so fired up about this Paul George news. Let's talk to the people about what we have coming up today. D-Lam will join us at
Right.
8:10. She'll give us the breakdown
Love
on
it.
everything we need to know and maybe a little bit of tidbits about what could be still happening with this team.
Well, also, too, I can't wait to hear what D and then Bob in midday, everything, Connor, what they have to say about what they would do the next move.
Right.
Like who's out there that they would go, you got to have. The only
exciting.
the only thing I'm worried about is the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
I just think this
It's a
is
fair concern.
This is going to be an old club.
Well, we'll talk about it at the top of the
Yes,
7 o'clock
exactly.
hour, but we also have Andrew DiCecco of Inside the
love that
Birds
too.
joining us live for the entire 9 o'clock hour. He's going to do that today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. We're going to have a lot of Eagles conversation with Andrew. We're also going to touch on a little bit of the Paul George stuff because I know he's a
I
basketball
guarantee
guy.
he's a basketball fan.
But we're going to have, if you're here for the Eagles talk, we will have plenty of that later on in the program to keep you satiated. But the big news of the day, of course, is this move with Paul George becoming a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. And I strongly believe a sentiment that Andrew Salciunas has shared since this became a possibility. He's a perfect fit basketball-wise. Like, shoots it at a 41.3% clip from deep last year. Spaces the floor, not afraid to take any shot, can create on his own. He's able to make clutch buckets. He's able to take over a game late. He can defend. He's got size. He fits so well. If he's healthy, man, is this a great move just from the X's and O's standpoint. So we're going to continue that conversation coming up. We'll open up the text line on the other side. More of your reactions, 610-632-0975. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade to my left, Tom Alvord on the board in my spot. And we are back after this. It's Kincade and Salciunas right here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Now is the time to become a fanatic.
Kincade, back from Vegas. The NHL draft trip sounds like it was a success.
It was good to see everybody out there. Good to see Jet join the crew the other night. And I'd like to thank Danny Briere. No, I really wouldn't. I'd like to rip Danny Briere.
Oh.
I'm ripping him. Not on the move to trade the 32nd pick because I actually love that move.
Okay.
I love it. And we talked about it for weeks that I did not think that the Flyers, and I said it the day before I left, I did not think the Flyers were going to use both picks. I love the fact that they have such a draft haul for next year. And I do not necessarily believe it's for draft, it's for players. But what I will say is this. Danny Briere trading the 32nd pick when I sat around all the way from 13. He took away 2 hours of pool time, gambling time, and otherwise to me.
Hey, it was a partial work trip.
I am billing Danny Briere for I came in 165 ahead.
Yeah,
and you know what? I came home with 165 more than I took. And what I would say is this: Daryl Morey had a better night at the tables than I had.
He certainly did.
He certainly did.
I don't know that you'll be seeing any payback from Danny
guess
Briere,
what? Well.
but
I will take it up personally. And when when Danny's on the show, we will discuss this personally.
But how about I offer this as something not as good as a green cold American cash, but I do owe you an apology, and I will apologize in proxy for Andrew Salciunas as well. And Tom, we're going to get to the text line in a second here, see what people's reactions are. You could jump in on the phone line or the text line at 610-632-0975 with your reaction to the Paul George signing that broke early this morning, a 4-year max contract with the Sixers. You said last week that you wanted to wait till July 10th was the date?
Yeah, around that.
That's what you wanted to do, or was it 10 days? You wanted to give it some time.
I want to give it time to ruminate.
Yes, because we already got a tweet from Brian Santillo on Twitter that says, last week everyone was saying blow up the team. We have nobody on the roster. July 1st, we are now contenders for a championship. And while the sentiment isn't exactly what we're saying.
Yeah, I sent him a tweet back, and I said, everyone is saying they're contenders for a championship?
Right.
Not yet.
It's not ever. But
Brian,
the point is.
No, not yet.
The point is, we were having the conversation about, is this the time to consider you're at the end of the road? And Andrew and I were not ready to give you that 10 days worth of time to let things play out. We were very brash on seeing what happened with Mikal Bridges getting traded to the Knicks and OG Anunoby going back. And you said, hey, take a second and see what they do.
Yeah,
and
I'm not going to judge it.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm not going to judge it on. I have to, and I think what it is it's there is something with snow on the roof that a little with age does come a wisdom.
Yeah.
And what it comes from is, honestly, it's not that I'm smarter. It's that I've been stupid so many times in the past that I've learned from being stupid in the past because I have been the knee-jerk reaction guy, which I don't try to be, but many, many times I've seen another move from another team and gone, crap.
Yeah.
We're done. And then something happens, and I got to go, okay.
Right.
Let's go back.
Well, I got a lot more years of being stupid to go.
Oh, you do. You haven't even touched in. You're like a hybrid too.
Yeah.
You don't even use all your gas up because
No.
you're keeping the tank full of stupidity.
I try and balance it a little bit. I let
That's
it out
good.
in the right spot. But today's a day to be stupid excited about this move because this is arguably the biggest free agent signing. You could argue that this is the biggest free agent signing in Sixers franchise history.
No, it is.
Like
it is.
to
No,
have this type of player.
And
come
why
here.
argue it? There's no arguing. Today, if you're looking to argue today, you're just going. Honestly, you're just going to sound stupid.
Well, we're looking to celebrate, and let's
celebrate a little bit today.
Let's
Please.
do that with the folks on the text line. So I know we have the text line blowing up with reaction to the Paul George move, a 4-year max contract signing with the Sixers announced early this morning. Tommy, what do we have from our friends on the text line?
All right, this is from Worldwide William. The Paul George signing is what we needed. Dominant big man and Embiid, explosive guard and Maxi, and one of the best two-way wings in the NBA now with George. Drummond, a rebounding machine. Eric Gordon, a three-point specialist. Kelly Oubre, nothing else to say. Great job so far, Morey. Let's all get behind the team. Stop worrying about how much the deal is for and what someone gets paid. It's 2024, and that's the dynamic in sports. Players get paid in all caps. If we win a chip, it's all worth it. Go Sixers.
The only thing is the rebounding thing with Drummond, and I'm glad to have Drummond back.
Yes.
I couldn't believe that people were trying to convince me all last year the Sixers didn't need a backup center. Oh, it's not that important. It's only 8 minutes a game. Well, those 8 minutes lost you the Knicks series.
Yes.
I'm convinced.
I totally agree.
But the one thing I am concerned a little bit about, Paul George doesn't help you rebounding at all.
Right.
At all.
He gets 5 a game.
So to me, it's like
6 a game for his career. That's not what you're getting him for. Now,
right.
If you find somebody who could play the 4 and you could put Paul George at the 3 and you get a guy. See, the upside of Paul George, here's how this works well, is you don't need scoring out of whoever's going to play the 4.
No.
Like
No, you don't. You can actually have it be a specialist.
Right, you can go get someone who's 6'9", 6'10", that all they do is go out there and rebound.
Because how many shots?
Balance it out.
How many shots are available?
There aren't many left out on
George
the table.
here.
PJ Tucker reunion, anyone?
Oh man,
0 points.
No,
That's what you asked for.
yeah, but no.
I already got an aging Rocket in Eric Gordon. I don't need PJ Tucker back.
And I
on
didn't
this
see
team.
enough. By the way, I didn't see enough of the dog. You know, the dog in PJ Tucker that everybody told me he was. I didn't see enough of it.
Dude, I don't need to see dog.
No, I don't need
a
to.
3. We don't need to do the PJ Tucker.
No, we don't.
I'm kidding.
I know you are. I know you are.
What else do we have on the text line there, Tommy?
All right, we have one here from no name, unfortunately. Sinclair, I think I have here.
What's up, Sinclair?
They basically traded Harden and Tucker for PG and 2 firsts and a pick swap. Morey is better than people think and deserves his credit for the organizational turnaround.
I didn't look at it that way.
It's a good way to look at
It
it.
is a great way to look at it.
That's another way. See, I'm looking at it. That's another thing. That guy's taught. That's a master's level thinker. He's going, look at it this way. I'm just looking at it at the basic level of Tobias Harris max contract slot taken by Paul George, and I'm done. At that point,
Right.
I'm convinced.
That's all you need.
And I don't dislike Tobias the way that Andrew just can't.
Or
can't
me.
even,
I'm
not
very
personal.
anti-Tobias as
Yeah,
well.
but you're not, and it's not personal.
No.
You know he's a good dude and everything, but I'm so thrilled with that, and
Right.
that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Love the guy as a person.
There's no chance he's coming back, though, right?
No. Absolutely.
There's no chance he's coming back.
No.
Okay.
He would be a great Detroit Piston. I wish him the best of luck for that.
Reportedly, maybe Golden State Warrior.
Sure. Wherever his heart desires, Tobias Harris can go. As
And
long as it's not a
I do
member of
wish
his
him well. I do
yes,
wish him well.
for sure. But you have substantially upgraded with Paul George. And I think, Johnny, the more we break down this move, the more we're going to like it.
I know that I'm. Look, as Tom said, I shocked him this morning. So I said that's where we're at.
But coming up next, we're going to go to the other side of that pro cons list that
Yep.
you have. And
I've
this
got
is not
one.
poo-pooing the move, but
No,
we're
it's
going
just-
to give you your floor to say, here's where it could go wrong. And I'm going to try and argue why it's going to go right.
I like
so
that.
We're going to get into that coming up. Also, more of your reaction on the phone line, text line 610-632-0975. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade is always with us. And Tom Alvord on the board in my seat. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic with more Kincade and Salciunas. Europe, so he'll be back next week. But we've got you covered, and we've got some big news. I can't imagine how Salciunas is feeling knowing that we get the Paul George show, and this is the guy he talked about wanting to fit so bad with the Philadelphia 76ers.
He did.
So, hey, our luck is lost. He's got vacation.
I think he's feeling good, but they finally got off the ground. That's the most important thing.
That is. So safe travels to him, and, man, safe travels to Paul George as he makes his way West Coast to East Coast to become a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, Johnny, we're going to get to that cons list.
Sure.
About why there are pitfalls with this move. It's not, oh, well, you shouldn't be excited, but there are definitely things to reference when it comes to realisms about this move. But first,
questions, right?
I got a text from my buddy Sean I play softball with, and he sent me this screenshot of the odds for the next NBA Finals champion. This comes from FanDuel.
Okay.
And as of this morning, post Paul George move, the Philadelphia 76ers have the third best odds to win the 2024-25 NBA Finals.
I know it's Boston.
Yes.
Is it Denver?
It is Denver.
Okay.
Boston plus 300 right now. Denver plus 750. The Sixers
plus 900.
Plus 850.
Wow.
So they are ahead of Oklahoma
great.
City.
Right.
They're ahead of the Knicks. They're ahead of the Timberwolves. They're ahead of the Mavericks.
Okay.
All of these teams that you saw down near the end last year are top seeds and everything.
What is the Knicks number?
The Knicks number is plus 950.
So the Knicks are
They're right
in
there.
breathing room.
It's tight.
But you literally have half of a roster.
Yes.
And Vegas is already telling you that they're better than the Knicks.
That's what we're hearing.
I sort of believe it this morning, but unfortunately they were better than the Knicks last year.
Right.
And lost a series.
And the Knicks got better as well with the Mikal Bridges
The
trade.
Knicks are a better team.
So that's part of the conversation.
That's interesting.
There are definitely some things that you have to consider, and we'll see how the offseason continues to go before we could say, well, this team ranks here in the East or where, but we can evaluate at this time. Before we do that, though, let's jump in on this because I know how you felt about this. We saw this strategy coming a million miles away coming into this offseason with the way that Daryl Morey was going to attack it. Whether you thought it was right, whether you thought it was wrong.
Sure.
It seemed that an older superstar player was going to be the main goal and probably the most likely result for this team to make their biggest addition. And that has concerns. And Paul George as an individual, not just because of age, but also because of injury. And there are questions about, listen, he doesn't come in here as three-time NBA champion Paul George, who is just a winning player and has been proven to work with other superstars. There are questions about multiple things. We love the move for what it makes the Sixers. But let me know, John, what do you think are the drawbacks or potential drawbacks of this signing of Paul George?
Well, the one thing is that, and I have to get past this. I have to get past the idea that you needed to secure the max contract spot. You couldn't let it lapse. You had to use it. But nobody else in the NBA was reportedly willing to go 4 years with him.
Right.
Nobody else was willing to give Paul George this contract. So what my concern is, and in the negative column is, Daryl Morey understands, and it's probably good that he understands his team. He knows he has a 2-3 year window or before this is going to start a rebuild.
Yes, and I think the easy answer to that is there aren't really teams out there like the Philadelphia 76ers that could have made this. Paul George would not have been a max contract signing. This deal doesn't get done for a team that's like, okay, we're 2 or 3 years away. We have one star and we need to make a big jump.
An Orlando team.
Exactly.
An Indiana team. Even though Indiana played in the conference finals this year, they're a team on the rise.
Right. You have to be a team that's not only close, but also has a max contract slot that's just sitting there open.
And you have to use it.
And there are very few teams in the NBA that came close to that criteria. The Sixers just seem to make the most sense. So while you're right that other teams didn't seem willing to go to this point with Paul George, I think there were very few that were in the position that the Sixers find themselves.
I would say is that I am someone who is, and I say it all the time, and people are like, business isn't the NBA. Business isn't Major League Baseball. I believe it is. I believe it is. And one of the biggest tenets of a business career that I learned was know the best practices of the people you're competing with.
Right.
What do they do well? What do you not do well? What are you doing? Tell me the last Ulster team that won it all.
Yeah, and I know that's a way you approach sports, and I think it's a prudent way to evaluate
And especially in an NBA, which the young guns can sort of run you into the ground over a 7-game series. And I think at times, the Sixers looked a little worn against the Knicks.
I will say that the last time was not too long ago. I would call that 2020 Los Angeles Lakers team.
I think you're
an older team.
Okay, I have the Lakers last. Who else would you think of if it's not the Lakers? Because I do have the Lakers on that.
Do you
list.
think there's one that's more recent?
No, I think, but in that realm, I mean, I'm not looking at that many.
Give it to me.
That I would say. I was gonna say the Boston crew, but they weren't that old.
You're talking the 08 Boston.
They weren't that old, but I mean,
no,
it doesn't happen. You don't put together the Golden Girls and win a title.
It's rare. It's not.
Well, it's extremely rare.
Yeah, it's not the safest way to approach things. But guess what? You didn't have the safest way. There wasn't an option. So.
And I think that there weren't a lot of options there. One of the things that I would question is the idea is that who is going to be, when you're this top heavy, what the problem is too is that you've got those 3 guys, all max slots, is that now you're going to have to go out and you're going to be getting short-term deals. Daryl Morey doesn't like short-term deals with young players for the most part.
Right, because you want to bring in guys that he does have, if he has the ability.
Now, Oubre was one.
Right.
That he got, and that was brilliant. Now we get Oubre back, which is great.
Yes, Oubre is back.
Maybe we're going to find the driver of that SUV in the term of the next 2-year contract. We're going to finally solve that mystery.
All I need him to do is go out there and score off the bench, and we'll be great.
But I mean, to me, all this means to me is you're going to get older. I think this team's going to get older than it is this morning in the next few weeks.
And here's why that's... Oh, go ahead, Tom.
No, real quick. So maybe, I think a lot of us were confused with them picking and keeping the 2 draft picks that happened last week. Maybe they're part of the plan more so than we thought coming into this year. Like, you have those 2 guys. Maybe they're more win now. Not this season necessarily, of course. Maybe Morey views them. They can help next season or even towards the end of the season coming up this year. Like, that McCain and Adembona makes a little bit more sense now to me because you have to kind of fill these slots in as little as possible with as little money as possible.
To your point, Tom, Nick Nurse also showed me something Doc Rivers, and I wasn't a Doc detractor, but sold me something that Doc Rivers wasn't able to do. He plays his bench.
Yeah.
Like Nick Nurse is going to develop these young guys.
Ricky
they're going to get play.
Right.
They're going to get an opportunity to show what they can do. And like, how many times was it? I believe before New Year's Eve, I think Joel Embiid had missed 12 fourth quarters.
Right.
He sat him for 12 fourth quarters. They were so comfortably ahead, and he was willing to play other players and to not take he had a long-term plan for Embiid last year that didn't work out because of the knee injury.
Right, but it was a smart long-term plan.
I trust that. I think Nick Nurse has probably been up all night. That's my guess.
Just scheming what he can do with Paul George.
He will be on the private plane. He'll be on the iPad thinking of all different ways. So that's a very much a positive.
Okay.
So I worry about them getting older.
Right.
That this roster will be older next week than it is today. I worry about the fact that nobody else was willing to go there with him. Mm-hmm. But I realize the position the Sixers were in, and I really feel it's a move. It almost seems no-brainer.
Yeah.
It almost seems no-brainer because I was an anti-Brandon Ingram. So
yeah, and I get that because of what you'd have to give up.
Right, and I did not want. And again, I had it in my positive column last hour. Daryl Morey hasn't touched any of the draft assets.
No.
And I got to tell you, I apologize, Daryl. I was absolutely of the mindset that he wasn't going to give a flip about them.
Right.
He obviously cares about them.
Because guess what? Like, that's the other thing with the whole getting older. You have the assets to trade for a young player that's great in a role. Like guys that can come off the bench, guys that can fill in the other 2 spots.
Just talking about like second
rotation.
Contract guys.
Yes.
Something like
someone who's not on the max that has been a really solid role player for a good team or maybe undervalued on a bad team. Similar to what you got with Kelly Oubre last year coming out of Charlotte. Like you're looking at a situation where you have assets to make trades for additional players that aren't necessarily stars, or you could use those picks. You have a couple of picks from the Clippers who are now in a spot where they just lost Paul George, who was supposed to be a guy that balanced that roster out to compete in the West. The Clippers' arrow is not exactly pointing upward. You want to talk about old.
And that's a bait and switch.
Yeah.
They got their new stadium opening up. Their own stadium.
Yes.
And now Paul George is gone. And you got James Harden wanting to be paid in ones, so we can go make it rain.
Hey, them's the breaks. Better them than us, right?
Yeah, better them.
But there's just so much. So those are your lists of things you're concerned about. And I don't think there's a single one of those things you just said that are not valid concerns. But on top of all of those, if we're building the pyramid, the number one thing to look at is this team is clearly better this morning as you wake up to the Paul George news than they were prior to.
Yeah, no, and if you're arguing that, you're just arguing.
That's all.
You're just trying to be devil's advocate because there really isn't any logic. No one can win that argument.
No.
No one can win the argument that the Sixers are worse off when you put in Paul George for Tobias Harris.
Yeah,
so
except Tobias Harris's dad, an agent.
Oh, he
true.
will, because he's an assassin scorer.
Somehow they'll find a way to get him into another max contract. But I want to hear more reactions from the folks. 610-632-0975. What do you think about those valid concerns? But also, the first thing is, how excited are you for this news? Just tell me what it feels like that somebody at that level of their game, I don't care that he's 34. Like I do in the basketball sense. But
you do in the basketball sense.
But in the sense of a superstar choosing to come to Philadelphia, something that we have not seen yet in the Joel Embiid era, like that should make you incredibly excited that there's still belief, not just in the fan base, not just in the organization, but around basketball, that this team is not out of contention. This team still has the window might be small, but it is still, what do you call it? The Window Nation window of opportunity,
Window
right?
Nation window of opportunity.
It's still open.
And it's doors, too, with the Salciunases now.
Well, the door might be propped open with Paul George.
The door may be
still
open a little bit. I think for a year or two, the door's there to be at least in the discussion.
Yes.
And as you say, the odds this morning, third, that's wild.
Man,
that's wild.
What a darn thing to wake up to. I want to hear some people excited. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's talk to Don in South Philly. Don, you're live here on The Fanatic.
Good morning, boss.
How you
Morning.
doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How y'all doing?
Good.
Can't complain.
Better than I was last night. This is good.
I think the Sixers is going to be great, and not only that, this is like the best deal since Moses and Doc. But I think that they're going to come out the East because New York, they're going to crush them. And now Tatum can get shut down by George or Eva Brown. He can shut either one of them down. He's a defensive specialist.
Yeah, man. Listen, Don, how awesome is it to have a player like, I feel like the other superstars that have been in this city at points with Joel Embiid have all had things that you look at and you say, okay, I wish they did that a little bit better. I wish they fit a little bit more here. If Paul George's only problem is availability, when he's on the court, it seems like he's going to be a huge difference maker, right?
Nobody's questioning that. I do question Don. The idea, you still think he's a shutdown defensive guy?
Yes, he is. And not only that, next year, you're going to have people like Durant wanting to come play with him when they come out the East.
Well, how about at the trade deadline this year? I think Durant could be something that comes at the trade deadline. No, I'm not kidding you. I really believe it could be something.
That'll be the greatest thing that ever happens because then we unstoppable. We are really unstoppable right now with Paul George coming to the team.
Now, I just saw Connor Thomas's face. He hasn't smiled like that since prom night. I mean, I think there is a distinct possibility.
And thanks for the call, Don.
And it's another one of my last things on the pluses. Attract free agents.
Oh, yeah.
Or get those deals. Superstars will – somebody who gets disgruntled is going to want to come here to be a part of that.
I don't know how that money works. That's the one big thing.
Probably doesn't.
Like,
But
probably doesn't.
With the new CBA, it's so tough. With so I just
probably doesn't.
I don't know how that works, but hey, we can dream, right?
I don't know.
It's
You
fun
can
day.
dream.
we don't have to dream. We have to wait a little bit under an hour because D-Lam's going to join us at 8:10.
D-Lam knows math.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the
Yes.
salary cap implications of what Paul George changes. Now, you have 3 max contract players when Tyrese Maxi signs his assumed deal. Paul George signs his assumed deal. Joel Embiid obviously still on it. How do you work that around to add other players potentially at the deadline, potentially later this offseason? We'll ask a little bit about that. But guess what? That's a problem for later.
I know, and I'm dreaming, by the way, with something like that. But but I think that if there's any disgruntled player that could ever fit, and I believe we're going to hear about, there's going to be still some potential moves of players that now the Sixers are more attractive than they were yesterday.
100%. We might have already seen it. with the Eric Gordon decision to come here, with Kelly Oubre's decision to come back. Like, we know how the NBA operates. You think these guys don't know? Joel Embiid was given the side eye to Paul George on live television like a month ago. They know who's going where, or they have an idea, or they've talked to somebody. So when you see guys start to sign here, you have to believe that a little bit of that is either the belief that Paul George was going to end up in Philadelphia or the knowledge that Paul George was going to end up in Philadelphia. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And that's something that, for all of his strengths on the basketball court, Joel Embiid has not done that. He has not brought players through free agency to Philadelphia, high-level star players to want to play alongside.
This is the only one.
And I don't know that that's a knock on Embiid. It's just reality that it has not happened. Now it's undeniable that you have three incredibly talented players at the head of the snake. 610-632-0975 is the phone number. Text line, call line. We got a lot of people wanting to check in on the show. Let's go to William in Philly next. William, you're live here on The Fanatic.
Yeah, am I here?
You're here,
William. You're here with us.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to say it right now. I'm delusional. 3 parades, Phillies, Eagles, and Sixers. Get ready to grease those paws.
Oh, man.
I'm bringing this whole season PG for Paul George.
I love it. I love the energy and the excitement
and
for
by
it.
the way, I believe I'm right back where we were 2 years ago when we were up 3-2 on the stinking Celtics and Harden quit on us. Now we got the piece we need.
Yeah, he did
if
quit.
If you know wrestling, this is like the third guy for the NWO coming in here.
Listen to this.
You got to add it in.
Dude, you sound so happy this morning. I love it.
I was up all night. I fell asleep before the news broke.
Wait, tell me this, Will. You stayed up through the night to wait to hear the Paul George news.
Yeah.
You were so
Nuts,
you were so sure it was going to happen?
I did not know. I you know Philadelphia. We could get a player and they never get the player. Philadelphia Eagles always get a player. I'm a big Philadelphia Eagles fan too. We're always going to get a player and then we don't get the player. So I stood up.
Listen to him giggling. You are giggling. I love it.
Yeah, William.
That's awesome, buddy.
I am going crazy. I won a Sixers parade. I was like 4 years old.
I've been to. Yeah, how about 12th grader John was at that one?
Oh,
William,
thank you for the call. Get some respite, guy.
Yeah, I was
Sounds
at
like
that
you could
parade.
use it.
My buddy Joe and I went to that parade. I remember taking the Red Arrow bus down to the L in 69th Street to go downtown for that parade. That was a great time.
Now,
it was a great time. It's been a long time.
The P word is probably not one that.
No, not today.
It's very
You know what,
early.
though? If he wants to be delusional, he started his call with,
Yes.
I'm delusional.
That's totally fine.
So then, if you know you're being delusional and you're just jacked up by the moment, be jacked up.
Yeah.
But the third best championship odds this morning on FanDuel, that's pretty wild.
You start to have
That's
that
pretty
conversation. And he brought up some of the other signings we are going to discuss, I promise. We're going to get into that coming up in our next segment. Eric Gordon, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, what that means for the Sixers, why those moves are just as important as the Paul George signing. But come on, man. We're going to get excited about the superstar name. We're going to get excited about the max contract deal.
Okay. So
What's up, Johnny?
While you were on there, I was tapping the Parks app.
Oh, yeah?
My Bet Parks app, so I can get ready for my Bet Parks commercials today.
Okay.
They're tied with Denver on the Bet Parks app.
Wow.
Second best odds.
That's incredible.
They're tied with them for the second best odds.
As much as I like the move, I never would have guessed it. It's such a competitive, top-heavy league right now. There are so many teams up there that I look at and I say, man, they're going to be tough out. They're going to be a tough out. The West is still going to be good. But the Sixers have put themselves in that conversation.
Now, that could be also a lot of locals buying in on the Bet Parks app.
Could be.
You know, but remember, that's still Ohio, Maryland, Michigan. It's the Sixers' second, tied with Denver.
You absolutely love it. By the way, I want to remind you, it is a Fanatic Monday here on the Fanatic, presented by Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com for flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. What a Fanatic Monday it is. I mean, this is what you dream of in early July. I almost said in June. It is July 1st, and it's a great way to start a month that normally is one of those, okay, well, we make it through the summer. Hopefully the Phils are playing well. Maybe the Sixers do a little bit of something. Like, no, this is a bona fide major move and a major story that we are going to be reacting to all morning long. And We've already had people talking parade, saying delusional, best team in the East, better than the Celtics right now. These are the reactions we're getting from people from this Paul George move.
See, we heard from one of our fine family here, Ron Davis, CPA.
Yes.
He says he's renewing his season tickets.
That's all it takes, right?
He was at the point of teeter-tottering. He's renewing his season tickets. I said, good, I'll join you at the game.
I have a theory on this that I'm also going to talk about coming up. We're going to talk about the other signings, Eric Gordon, Kelly Oubre, and Andre Drummond, who all in their own right move the needle for the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll talk about who fits best and all of those moves, but I also have a theory on why people are so excited about this move in spite of where this fan base was just a week ago.
Wow.
So I'll share that with you coming up, and feel free to call me crazy, delusional, like our last caller, William, who stayed up all night. But I think there's some credence to it. So a lot still to get into. D-Lam joins us at 8:10 for a deeper breakdown on the move. Big day here on Kincade Salciunas as we react to Paul George signing with the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm Connor Thomas, in for Andrew Salciunas. We're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic. What a morning it's been so far, and it's not even 7:30 yet here on Kincade Salciunas. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade alongside me, Tom Alvord on the board. And, man, we've been just fired up this morning. There's no other way to put it about this Paul George signing. I know there are drawbacks. John and I just went through them to start the top of this hour. There are definitely some things when you look at Paul George as a huge part of a potential championship team, and you say, okay, I have a concern about this, concern about that. And those things, well, they may come to pass in due time. But that's more of a conversation for the season. That's something that will cross that bridge if and when we come to it. Right now, there should be one reaction. In my mind, I think in John's mind, I think in Tom's mind as well. This makes your team substantially better. This is a huge watermark moment for this era of Sixers basketball in that a free agent, a major free agent, has chosen Philadelphia, and you have brought this fan base back, it feels like, from the reaction we've gotten so far this morning, to a place where there is some semblance of belief that this team can compete.
Do you remember when I talked to you on Friday that as I'm walking through Bellagio at the Sportsbook the other night, I'm looking at the NBA championship odds on Thursday night, and there were 8 franchises listed ahead of the Sixers. And I checked in my BetParks app this morning, and the Sixers are tied for second.
Like, that's such a huge jump.
I mean, it's now there are other. I don't know if the other moves help too,
right?
If it's just Paul George, but there are believers in the Sixers. There are a lot of people that are believers that are not Philadelphia fans, not Sixer fans, that are looking at things and saying, yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a quick theory. I promised you that I would get into this theory I have about why, but I don't think if you deep down asked everybody, like Sixers fans, people who know the game of basketball, know who Paul George is a player, I don't think you would have had many people that said, nah, he doesn't make this team better. No, he's not a good fit. Like, deep down, you know that Paul George is a talented basketball player who puts you in a different stratosphere than Tobias Harris ever could have. But I think this fan base is so beat up that even when you have the potential prospect of a good move, you cannot celebrate anything with the Sixers. You cannot enjoy anything with the Sixers until you see it concretely. I think there have been so many times where it's, oh, well, we might get this player. Oh, this guy might sign here. Oh, you think veteran buyout, this guy might come. Oh, this player's going to fit perfectly. Oh, Al Horford's going to work great. Doesn't work out. Oh, Tobias Harris, max contract. Okay, he's going to be alongside these guys. He's got a high ceiling. Doesn't work out. Like, I just think you can't get this fan base, fairly so, with the way things have gone with the Sixers organization over the past 7 or 8 years. You can't get this fan base to react in this way until it legitimately happens. The Eagles fans, like, when you see rumors about potential Eagles move,
right?
Guys they could sign, people will be excited from Jump Street. People will be losing their minds like those players already have the jersey.
You know how he could deliver them.
Exactly. And it's not even so much a Daryl Morey thing. It's just this is such a snake-bitten organization that you feel like it's darker than it actually is when it comes to where the team is at. And I don't think that's necessarily a fault of the fan base. I think that's the natural side effect of being a Sixers fan for the past 7 years. But I think that's why we're seeing such an outpouring of excitement this morning, because it's been pent up a little bit, hidden behind the wall of, man, it just feels like this team can't get there.
Don't look for the dark clouds today.
Right.
Because honestly, if you're looking for dark clouds, just take it back to there isn't a general manager in the league that would have said, yeah, I'd like to trade you Tobias Harris for Paul George. So please, think of it that way at just its most basic quality and say, your Sixers are better. Now, Daryl, you got more work to do.
It's
been good. He's been doing good, though. It's a nice start. I love it. And I love that they took the mountain to him, that they went to L.A., were in his face as soon as they were allowed to, and got a deal done.
You know what I also love? They didn't wait. And I was very much in the camp that they should take care of the max contract slot first, and then everything else falls into place.
Okay.
We got 3 signings yesterday before the Paul George thing happened. Now, I imagine that cross-country...
None of them affected the max contract slot.
No, it wasn't even so much about the money. It was about the fit. And I imagine while they were making that cross-country flight to L.A., they had a pretty good feeling that it was going to end up with a deal. That was the sentiment that was largely passed around NBA circles yesterday, all over social media. So I'm sure they had an idea, hey, these guys that are potentially signing here are coming here to play alongside Paul George, and this is how they would fit. But those signings that they made yesterday, in addition to Paul George, you say Daryl Morey's got more work to do. Man, you could take the next, 6 hours off. He had a busy day yesterday with 4 players coming to the Sixers. Let's get into the other signings while we have them on the front of our mind. And
sure.
As you ponder that, I do just want to remind you, something special tonight. Coming up tonight at 6, we've got a special free agency edition of 76ers All Access. Ray Dunn and D-Lam, who you're going to hear D at 8:10. They're going to have the latest news and updates on what's going on with free agency. They're going to have more reaction to Paul George later, so check that out. 6 to 8 tonight on 97.5 The Fanatic, 97.5thefanatic.com.
I would imagine Cooney and Tyrone Johnson could have been awake this morning at 5 in the morning, ready to do a show.
Yeah, well, Bob doesn't sleep, and Tyrone is up early, so I'm sure they're already
Tyrone's probably had a run.
Yep.
And I'm sure that they're both ready to. It's going to be a day of great reaction, and again, without the hot takes.
Yes.
Without the let's just be contrary to be contrary's sake. Even though I have doubts. I still have doubts. I am not telling you there's a parade coming or anything like that. All I'm looking at it is my basketball team better today? They're better in multiple slots.
Significantly.
Than they were.
We are fortunate to do this job, as you guys both know. Some days are harder to come in than others. This is a fun day to come to work.
This was an easy.
Yeah.
Well,
besides the tarmac night last night.
Yeah, I'd say 3.5 hours sleep, thanks to the storms last night. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But it makes it a little bit easier on you.
Yes,
there,
it
Johnny.
does. It does. A little bit easier.
Yep.
This is a no-brainer day,
absolutely,
which really plays to working with Connor. It's perfect.
This is my specialty. I get called in for the no-brainer shows. That's why Andrew felt comfortable taking vacation.
I think Scott was thinking next level on this one. This is great.
Okay, well, I'm going to need your brain a little bit for this one because we have a couple other players to talk about. So yesterday, the first signing that gets done is we find out the Sixers are reuniting with somebody who was lauded as the best backup big that Joel Embiid has ever had to play with. And that is Andre Drummond. We find out that Andre Drummond is coming back to the Philadelphia 76ers. And even that, I kind of got the sense of what the Paul George reaction was going to be because I was surprised the amount of outpouring of support for the Andre Drummond move. Not that I thought people were going to think it was a bad move, but I think it's very easy to see a backup big man sign and say, yeah, they needed it. But I don't get all that excited over, yeah, they just needed to fill that slot. Andre Drummond is the perfect backup big for this team. He was when he was here.
He was.
You had to move him as part of the Ben Simmons trade, and that sucks because it would have been nice to keep him on that team. But now he does come back. And
you had to. There was no way you were getting James Harden without putting him in.
Exactly.
So, I mean, Jake, let's not litigate that again.
No.
You know what I mean? There are people who will probably want to.
The point is you had to move him. You wanted him back. The Bulls would not trade him because the Bulls are a dumb organization.
No idea what they were thinking.
And now he comes back, a 2-year, $10 million deal that has him set here.
It's his option for next year, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so,
So it's really like a 1-year deal.
Right,
again.
yeah,
Correct.
you can go ahead and you can have him through 1 year, or if this works out.
I love that flexibility from the Sixers side, too.
Yes.
I like it.
It just, we talked about rebounding. We talked about, I know how Andrew feels about Paul Reed, and you have a guy, Adam Bona, that you drafted. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. He's a second-round draft pick.
Does Paul Reed, well, by the way, I'm very impressed with that pick. So I had a lot of time to read on the plane. I really like that pick, and I know nothing about the player.
Sure.
I knew nothing about
My
him.
point is, he's not going to just walk in here and be the lock backup big man to Joel Embiid and solve all your problems. You needed a guy that can work with this franchise, can work with Embiid, can be out there and be the exact type of guy that spells those minutes that killed you against the Knicks, and not just the Knicks. The backup big minutes have been a problem for the past decade.
And to me, the fact that it was ignored this past year, or that they put, and I say ignored, and by the way, I have said ignored to Daryl Morey himself.
Yeah.
Face to face. I think they ignored the backup big man, and I never understood it.
Yeah.
But I think they had a plan that they thought was going to work, You can't count on that.
Right.
This is nice. We don't have to worry about that.
That's unfair, but now, again, that criticism point is now gone. That
right, that's
pitfall
gone. That's
is
gone.
taken off the table by Andre Drummond, and he's already worked alongside Joel Embiid.
Correct.
So that's great. Then you go ahead and you figure out that Kelly Oubre is coming back, and that is surprising to me because I thought...
You were surprised by this?
Yes.
Okay, tell us why you were surprised.
Not that he's back, but that he's back at the number that he's back at.
I can't believe the number.
Because we all talked about it. He was on a veteran minimum contract last year, coming from the Charlotte Hornets, averaging 20-plus points per game down there. And you say, okay, well, I guess you kind of got a steal. But as soon as he has a great year in Philadelphia, he's going to be a big contract player somewhere. Not a max deal, of course.
No.
He's going to get paid because of his exploits. And he had a great year. He had some really impactful minutes for the Philadelphia 76ers. And he comes back on a 2-year, $16.3 million contract. It's insane that you got him at that dollar amount. I have to imagine there are multiple other suitors.
Here's what I'm going to ask you. Why do you assume that?
Because there can't be any way. Like, in my mind, I don't think there's any way the teams looked at Kelly Oubre's impact last year and said, if we sign this guy to be, I don't know, a fourth or fifth starter when it comes to impact level, a role player, I think he would be a great piece on a team that's ready to compete. And I think there are a lot of teams that are ready to compete.
I got to tell you that I think what it tells you is exactly the opposite.
Okay.
I think it tells you that there weren't a lot of suitors out there for him.
Interesting.
That number shocked me. I was trying to figure out yesterday what would the number be, sitting there jotting on the plane like numbers that I thought it would be. I'm floored, and it tells me that he had a very soft market.
Now, it did happen pretty quickly. Like, this isn't something that he waited a week after legal tampering starts, sees what his market is, and then circles back to the Sixers. Because it happened as quick as it did, I kind of lean Connor's side here, where I think he just wanted to come back and try and finish this thing, for lack of a better term.
It could be, but it is a major discount, so whenever you see someone take that, you do believe, like, you don't... We like to assume that players are going to cut a deal to come back to a place they like to play. But
I think he was very comfortable, though.
Yes.
He was obviously very, and I think part of it, too, I'm not sure he's ever been comfortable with a coach before. And it was extremely... Remember how much he had Nick Nurse's back on the one night with the officials that he was getting into? We were at the game.
Yeah.
And we were at the game.
That was worth a second contract just on its own.
Like, I think that, to me, says something that when you're comfortable with your boss, you're comfortable with the city, this city loved him. And by the way, just to you out there, nobody brought up that Kelly Oubre paints his nails. Nobody brought, not ever once. Did we ever have anybody bring that up last year?
No.
That Kelly Oubre played with painted nails.
And then you got the Jared McCain people right off the bat.
Maybe it's because nobody knows him, McCain. Nobody knows McCain.
He's a rookie.
Everything.
Oubre had a resume.
But nobody cared that he paints his nails.
Because he played good ball, and that's all I care
absolutely.
about. That's it.
And I said, hey, if this team gets to the finals, I will paint my nails.
That's what you need. And then you also go get Eric Gordon. We'll talk about that here in a second because I think that's a sneaky, impactful signing on a veteran minimum contract.
They got him at the early bird dinner, too, I heard. They negotiated the deal.
35 years old.
Jeez.
I get that. That's been something that the Sixers have done recently. They've brought in players like that, but a veteran minimum contract, I'll never get mad at it. And while it is another former Houston Rocket, it puts together this string of things that these players all have in common that you're adding right now. Well, not Andre Drummond, but the other three guys. And I think it's exactly what we've been asking for. We'll talk about that coming up and more reaction on the phone and text line, 610-632-0975. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. John Kincade to my left, Tom Alvord on the board. We're back after this. You're on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Kincade and Salciunas, weekday morning 6 to 10. Conversations that will make
Embiid on the Paul George signing, the huge news, I was going to say of the day, I guess the night, the early morning, I don't know. Who signed somebody at 3:30 a.m.?
3:32 in the morning. My alarm hadn't gone off for another 28 minutes.
It was crazy.
Boy, did I jump out of my skin when that happened.
And I did not expect, because I woke up in the middle of the night. I woke up around like 1:30. I checked Twitter, of course, because I'm like, just in case. I didn't see anything. And I'm like, okay, so we'll wake up in the morning and we'll talk about, Paul George watch. Maybe he'll be signing during the show.
And Joel was, by the way, up waiting.
Yeah.
Like waiting for something to happen. He goes, still waiting.
Oh, hey, it paid off. We've already talked to a couple people who waited up through the night for that Paul George signing, and you were rewarded. They could have done it a little bit earlier to save us all some sleep.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
Bottom line, I'm not going to complain. Paul George is a Sixer. It's the biggest free agent signing of the Joel Embiid era, possibly of the franchise's history. I mean, you got to go way back. But having this top-level superstar max contract player decide that he wants to come to Philadelphia, whether he had a bunch of options or not, like, you can always choose other places. He was not forced to come to Philly. He decided that this was the place he wanted to play. That should make you feel really good about, Daryl Morey's ability to add players and make that case, in spite of the allegations that have come out about James Harden saying he's a liar and the Chris Paul story that came out. Say what you want about those statements by previous players. Clearly, people still want to come and play here. They want to play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxi. And now you have a substantially better team that is, depending where you look, third or tied for second in NBA Finals odds on sporting books right now.
You know what I love, too, is that, second best odds on my BetParks app. I love the fact, too, that think of Paul George has hung out with the past year or so with James Harden.
Yeah.
And you know what he thought about James Harden's Daryl Morey's a liar and Daryl Morey can't be trusted and Daryl Morey sucks? He said, I don't listen to you.
Well, hey,
I don't listen to you.
I love that.
And I love that, too.
$53 million a year is $53 million.
No, I get you.
Yes, he could have gotten it from the Magic.
But he did. Correct. He could have gone to the Magic and done it.
That's very true.
And I love the fact that he was like, screw you. I'm not listening to, sweat and honey mustard James Harden. I'm just not.
Yeah, listen, it's a great move for the Sixers. It makes Fanatic Monday all that much more special, which Fanatic Monday is presented by Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com for flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. And I told you there was a common thread, right? We're going to get to the phone line. We're going to get to the text line in just a second. But there's a common thread in these moves.
Okay.
We have been dying for the Philadelphia 76ers to put a heavy emphasis, and they tried to last year. They did. I think Daryl Morey did a solid job last year of doing this, but finding players that space the floor.
See, that's fantastic.
You need to get shooters. We know what Kelly Oubre can do with spacing the floor. Now, he's not as consistent as some of the other players you've signed, but Kelly Oubre can shoot it. He can get his own buckets, but he can space the floor when he needs to. Eric Gordon, I know he's 35, is not prime Eric Gordon, and people might say, Daryl Morey just adding another former Houston Rocket from his time there. Dude, he shot 37.8% on three-pointers last season. Like, you got a guy that, and he can do better than that. He's a well-documented, strong three-point shooter. Paul George shot over 41% last year from deep. Tyrese Maxi.
By the way, that was something I was totally still a little shocked at.
Yeah.
I did not know that he had. Like, I knew he was still a very good shooter.
Yes.
That's really, really good.
And none of these guys
really
are afraid to shoot. Like, they all have the temperament to continue to shoot even if they're not having their best night. Like, there is a concerted effort to go out and get players that not only fit in multiple ways, but can all space the floor so there's not a build-up around Joel Embiid and allows him to operate in space. And that's a beautiful, beautiful plan by Daryl Morey and the Sixers front office so far. 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump into the program. Going to get back to some texts in a second, but the phone line's blowing up. Let's go to Josh in New York next. Josh, you're live here on The Fanatic.
Hey, guys. Happy Paul George Day.
Happy Paul George Day, Josh.
Thank you very much, buddy.
Two quick points and then a wild story. Quick point one, John, I think the Warriors would have given him a 4-year max if they could have figured out the trade. And they'd be mistaken. But
if they could have figured out a trade, sure.
Right. Yeah,
but,
so value-wise.
Yeah, exactly.
There were others.
That is still value.
Two, one of the best parts of this is our pick from the Harden Clippers is unprotected in 2026. So as they get worse, the pick we got from them in the Harden trade gets more valuable.
See Josh, you're a next level. You're a next level thinker. That's another thing that I had not had on my positives and negatives. That's a great one.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So, wild story. I have a friend, very, very big lawyer in New York, very connected with Leon Rose, Mike Levine from CAA. Texts me Friday morning, and it just says, Paul George to the Sixers done. And I take it with a grain of salt, so I'm in text chats with my Knicks friends, answering, basically saying it's a done deal, but, people just float stuff out there. So I take it very, very for what it's worth, knowing who he is. This was done on Friday, guys.
Well, that's one.
We're not flying out there without a deal. It wasn't like a show and tell like meeting the Hamptons with Durant. This deal was done well in advance, and they just didn't want to be caught tampering, etc.
Yeah, and I was wondering if this was going to affect the white party. I was really wondering.
Michael Rubin's party?
I was very worried about the white party being affected.
I think everyone will still get the invites and everything. That supersedes the NBA. That is at the top of the totem pole. That is the number one place they want to be. If it's play NBA basketball.
It's the most awkward-looking party I've ever seen in my life.
I would go, though. But
I know you'd
looks like a fun time.
It looks like the most awkward party ever, though.
I'd go just to say I was there, take a couple pics, and head out.
No questions asked.
Grab a handful of popcorn. Bust that out.
Absolutely. Nobody is turning down the invite to that party.
No, but Josh's sentiment, our last caller there, I think is right. Not so much like, I don't know if the deal was done Friday or not. It did feel like this wasn't a go out and ask him meeting. It was a go out and get this done meeting. And that is a very pointed approach by Daryl Morey and the Sixers brass, and it pays off. So I love that they got their guy, and I love that they were very focused on handling things the way that they wanted to. They're taking control of this offseason. They're not waiting for it to come to them. And that was a criticism when we saw the Mikal Bridges move, that they might be letting things develop too quickly. Real quick, Tom, let's see what we got on the text line. Other people excited about Paul George still?
Yeah, we have a ton of excitement when it comes to Paul George. Just from Miz in Northeast Philly. The Sixers had a great weekend. The truth is they needed to improve from Tobias Harris, and they did. They brought back Oubre, and now can give Embiid some rest with Andre Drummond. The Sixers today are a much, in all caps, better team than they were last year. Win while you have Embiid the next 2 to 4 years. Let's go, all caps, exclamation points.
I love that excitement, and that's the thing. This window is the next 2 years, right? The next 2 to 3 years. But from a point, 4 days ago, where we started having conversations about if there's a window, I don't care if it's only 2 years.
It surprises me, Tom. I surprised you and Connor this morning, how positive I am on where we're sitting at.
Yeah.
It surprises me that we haven't had the poo-poo squad show up.
I agree, actually.
I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited about that because it just reeks positivity today. This is a positive day.
It absolutely is.
You're searching for something to be negative about if you're being negative.
It feels like there's momentum here. And we felt that recently with the Sixers with the reaction to the loss to the Knicks. We felt like that was the least hurtful loss because we saw a glimpse of something. The big key was you have to fill a lot of space this offseason, and the Sixers have started off doing that incredibly well. Coming up, we got today's headlines at 8:05 with Tom Alvord, who will go ahead and take care of those duties. And then we'll talk to D-Lam at 8:10 about her thoughts on the move and a little bit of a deeper dive into what this offseason is going to look like for the Sixers continuing forward. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade to my left, Tom Alvord on the board. And we're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic for more Kincade Salciunas. Salciunas, he is out of the country for the week. Have we considered that he's potentially the bad luck for the Sixers?
No, because there's nobody who is more just totally gigged up than he is.
I don't know. That was a very quick Paul George signing the second that Andrew got on a plane.
Does he definitely know?
Yes.
Like, do you think he does know right now?
That'd be hilarious if he didn't.
No, I guarantee you he knows. There's no way even on an international flight that he doesn't have.
Someone would have said so.
That he doesn't have internet.
Andrew separates completely, though, on vacation.
Yeah, but not about that. No. Because, like, last night he was, even though we hadn't left yet, we were literally thinking, we were joking that he was going to wave to me as I was coming back and he was leaving. And, I mean, it was a terrible night down at the airport.
Well, there are people who don't know. There are definitely people still waking up.
That they don't know what, Connor?
That Paul George is signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now,
Holy God.
There's something real important first. I do want to tell everyone, drive safe to work. Because that does not go out the window with Andrew Salciunas not being
drive safely.
But with that out of the way, yeah, Paul George is a member of the Philadelphia 76ers in principle. He can't officially sign the contract yet, but the contract is agreed to. A 4-year deal worth $212 million, a max contract extension. And, man, you know what's crazy about this? Normally, when we talk about big news, it happened the day before.
Sure.
A lot of people have broken it down. We have all these audio clips and takes from national reporters and local reporters on their thoughts. We're getting this stuff live because nobody knows. It happened in the middle of the night. It happened at like 3:30 a.m. Eastern time. So Woj jumped on SportsCenter earlier today, and he gave, well, I guess just very recently, and he gave his first thoughts on Mike about what this move is. So we're going to play this. First time you're hearing this audio, Woj talking about the move, Paul George signing with the Sixers.
The Sixers' willingness to go to a 4-year deal for Paul George at 34 years old, something that the Clippers were not willing to do, and the chance to play with Joel Embiid, with Tyrese Maxi, an opportunity to be now on a championship contender, to go to Philly, try to win that city's first title since 1983. Paul George was at a meeting last night, very late in LA with Phillies management, with Dr. J, Julius Erving, and he committed to the Sixers before he left that room. And now, you know, Paul George comes to a Sixer team that's trying to overtake the Boston Celtics, and it gives them the big two-way wing player that you need to play against Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown.
I think that Tyrone Johnson can never use the Mr. J thing again. Which I advocate.
No, he can't at this point.
By the way, which I advocate for because I fully endorsed Tyrone's nickname because I thought he has negatively affected national perception of Joel Embiid. But this is a redemption move.
It definitely, it's amazing that
it's a redemption.
The Dr. J, Mr. J, whatever J you want to call him, Julius Erving.
He's Doc.
that he went and made that trip to advocate on behalf of the franchise. That's huge. The Sixers were very pointed in their approach.
Yeah, I like it.
And, I mean, I can't give them enough credit for how they've handled this and handled this quickly and got the job done. It's a great thing what the Sixers have done. And that Woj point, the best part of that to me, when you talk about playing Boston and you talk about that two-way wing player, I thought until this morning when I woke up and saw Paul George was a Sixer that it was illegal for the Sixers to find a star two-way wing. I did not know that they were allowed to do that. I thought Adam Silver put something in the NBA bylaws.
You thought there was a rule.
Because it's always been a need, and it's never really come to fruition in the way we wanted it to. And we can't say that anymore. So we'll react to more of that. D-Lam joins us coming up at 8:10. But now it's time for today's headlines with Tom Alvord.
Today's headlines with Connor Thomas.
What's up, boys? How we doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, Connor's not doing it, though, because Tom's doing it.
That's true. We might need a rotating intro.
So I know.
We got to get it. We really need to get it.
It's been like multiple weeks now. So, yes, we will. But regardless, we've been heavy Philadelphia 76ers for good reason. We did have another team play here, or make news here, the only team to play here over the weekend, and that's the Philadelphia Phillies, of course. Saturday was ugly. Offense did not step up for the team. And Trey Turner talked about it post-game Saturday, how they're putting a little bit too much pressure on themselves.
I mean, you want to do the same thing, right? But I think sometimes, guys try a little bit harder in situations. I know today that was probably the case. I mean, just trying to do a little too much, and I missed some good pitches to hit and then started chasing. So, I think it's really easy to look at from afar, but then when you're out there, it's hard not to try a little bit harder, without those guys. So
Was very curious to see how these guys responded Sunday, and your big guys stepped up massively for you yesterday. Turner, 3 for 5 on his birthday, by the way. Nick Castellanos, 4 for 5, 3 RBI.
See, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
It is.
3 RBI for Castellanos, 2 RBI for Trey Turner. Big guy stepped up in a big way yesterday. That was really good to see.
Yeah, I called it the win of the season for a couple
that's
reasons.
Interesting.
I'll give you the abbreviated argument here. I think that the fan base was at a really weird spot. You lose a series to the Marlins. Harper and Schwarber go down earlier in the series. You still don't have JT. I think this could have easily, if you lost that series, turned into the narrative of, oh, this team is floundering right now. And their ceiling is still high, but how do they withstand this time, even though it's shorter than we thought?
I got you.
Without them. That comeback win shows that they could still fight, that they're not giving up, that they believe they could still beat any team on any day. And it's still their big comeback, their biggest comeback win of the year, coming down from 6-2. 4-run comeback is, I don't know. I felt like that was potentially a turning point of this stretch of the season.
I got you.
And that team said, nah, we ain't going down a bad path.
I think the good news is that it's, and you know that I tend to be a guy who will point out the flaws of Rob Thompson at times. I just don't think he has a great feel during a game managing it. But I do think he's the perfect guy when things start to get a little edgy and for the team to just be like, relax.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Steadies the ship very well.
Unfortunately, it wasn't all good for the Philadelphia Phillies because there is one sore spot with this team that I notice right now, at least one, and that's our buddy Whit Merrifield. Whit 0 for 3 yesterday and had 3 of these bad boys.
Look at this. Merrifield is down on strikes, 3rd strikeout.
How long do they keep him? Like, is he on this team after the trade deadline? I've been patient with this team. If he's still struggling after the deadline, you got to make a move, and he's out of here.
He's atrocious.
He's on the team after the deadline. Whit Merrifield will be on this team until this team stops playing
in
baseball
September. He will be on the team. Okay.
God, he's atrocious. He is atrocious.
He's been very bad this year.
You're understanding, and I said it before, you are understanding why he was sitting at home and nobody in Major League Baseball had offered him a contract.
But
it's obvious.
Here's what I'll say. Jake Cave was just as bad last year. He ended up taking the last at-bat of the season for you. You're going to need depth, and Whit Merrifield has a stellar resume in his career. I know he's not playing well right now, and I'm not here selling you the idea that he's going to come out of it. But the fact that you know what type of player he can be means
he was. We know what kind of a player he was.
Can be.
He's not that guy.
Maybe not for a season. But
maybe a one at bat, maybe you're talking about?
No, for like a week.
I don't
Whit
believe
Merrifield
he can be that.
Get hot. He can. I don't know that it's likely, but that's why he'll be on this team.
No, I believe he can have a good night. And I know, guarantee when he goes out and has 2 hits one night, it'll be like, see, Kincade, see, Whit Merrifield, you were jogging him. Whit Merrifield has been garbage. A garbage signing.
Has
been. Could he turn it around? I do not believe so. I will gladly admit that I was wrong.
I don't think it's likely, but it's possible, and that's why he'll still be on this team.
And last up, real quick, we've obviously been talking a lot about the Paul George news. Here's a little clip real quick.
Now that you see the contract, know the move is happening, what's your immediate reaction to the Paul George news?
Now, you guys obviously have been talking a ton. We're getting to the listeners. I haven't given my true thoughts on it real quick. It is the right move for the Philadelphia 76ers. The right move. People could sit here and say, oh, you should have went out and traded for Brandon Ingram. You should have waited and traded for Lauri Markkanen. You should have done this. You should have done that. Those weren't sure things. You could have gotten outbid. There's no guarantee that those guys were actually going to be on the market. To me, you had the short thing in Paul George. He's a great fit. This was the right move for the Philadelphia 76ers, and those are today's headlines.
Wow, we're all in agreement, and that does not happen very often on this program.
Not.
But when you get a move like this, it's easy to all be on the same page. It's also easy to make a text last night and say, hey, we need an expert to talk about what's going on with the Sixers. And you can hear our next guest thoughts. You can hear it tonight coming up at 6 on The Fanatic, a special free agency edition of 76ers All Access with Ray Dunn and our very own D-Lam, who joins us now. She'll give her thoughts then. But, D, Paul George is a member of the Sixers in principle. I know the contract isn't inked yet, but thanks for joining us. And what's your initial reaction to the signing?
Well, I mean, I think over the last 48 hours, I thought it was a great thing in terms of the Sixers having a chance to get him when he opted out, because it took the sign and trade possibly to the Warriors. You know, it took all of that out of the mix there for the most part. And then I spent most of my day yesterday telling people why this is a good signing for them. to be able to compete with the likes of the Celtics and even the Knicks in the East coming up. So I love it. I mean, let's just say if you're going to put them as your power forward, because they also are bringing Kelly Oubre back. You have Eric Gordon. I would stick him, unless you have somebody else that comes along that I haven't seen yet. But you'd have Maxi, Gordon, Kelly as the small forward, Paul as the power forward. And if anybody wants to tell me that's not an upgrade from Tobias Harris, please give them my phone number, and I'm happy to talk to them.
I mean, D, it is so exciting, and I don't know if you've even checked your Bet Parks app this morning, but the Sixers have second best odds to win the championship. The other day, I walked in the Bellagio Thursday night and took a picture of the board, and there were 8 teams ahead of the Sixers on just Thursday night.
Well, I hope you put a bet on Thursday night. Come on.
Well, it's dramatic. I mean, this is dramatic. No, I got to tell you, D, I needed to hear more of your insights because maybe I wasn't a full believer in the reality of this situation.
Well, I will say a lot of things fell the Sixers' ways, and Daryl probably would be able to tell you that. I think when he set out, and we could tell from the beginning, Paul George was his guy. Let's face it, in this free agency class, with the exception of LeBron, Paul was the best one available. And, now there weren't a ton of teams. There were 7 total that had cap room to sign him. But of those teams that had the cap room, by far, the Sixers are the closest to being able to win a championship if everything went right. Orlando's just not there yet, and Paul wasn't going to be the one to get them in the next 2 years to championship caliber. So, to me, he started out as we all thought he was going to definitely stay a Clipper, but when they decided that they were not going to budge on that 4th year, and that 4th year is worth $50 million, and when I'm, probably playing in my last, for sure, max deal, and I'll be 38 when he has the player option on that 4th year, that $50 million, I'm sorry, it does mean something. So, and it also might have been, why do you not want to bring me back and give me that max deal? Now, their point was, you and Kawhi, we want both of you to finish here at the same time. And at that time, obviously, they felt like they'll probably want to go in a different direction. And I think the second apron with the new rules, I think teams have to think about that. It will become very, very difficult to move players.
So let's talk about the numbers while we're on the subject. It's a 4-year, $212 million max contract deal for Paul George. Are there concerns from your perspective about the length of the deal, the amount it's for? I know you had to sign him to a max, but to people who say, I don't want to pay $55+ million to 38-year-old Paul George, what do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I want to be in the here and now, and if I get a championship, then, it all is good with me. I mean, you win championships when you have talent and the right guys with each other. You still have to fill in the rest of your roster, and I get that part. And we all know none of this will matter if Joel Embiid is not healthy in a playoff, postseason time. That's just truth of this matter, and we've always known that. But he needs these kind of players around him to be able to get that chip, so to speak, with a healthy body of his own. So, no, I'm not. I mean, first of all, you got to know what the going rate for players are right now, and that's just the finances of the NBA, which says it's a very, very healthy league.
D, I love the fact that you went to the Embiid healthiness angle because it was where I was going to ask you the next question. The idea of, we saw Nick Nurse's plan 12 times before Christmas. Joel Embiid did not have to play a 4th quarter because of the way that Nick Nurse ran the rotations, and they were comfortably enough ahead, and he felt that way. Do you believe this even takes more mileage in the regular season off of Joel Embiid because of the scoring that Paul George brings?
Well, to be honest with you, John, I don't think that Joel's postseason, health issues have had anything to do with his wear and tear during the regular season.
Oh, sure, but I think that's what Nick Nurse's plan was, right? Or could I be incorrect with that?
No, I hear what you're saying. I think circumstances, they put themselves in, with big leads that they could rest the guy. I don't think that is the problem. I mean, he's had a lot of fluke things happen to him. Come on, tell me another player that had Bell's palsy right when the postseason starts, as one of his many. The tripping up with the Golden State guy, kind of a fluke injury. I think that it's his time to have a little good luck when, April is rolling around. But I hear you. If you don't have to play him, 38 minutes on most nights, that's a good thing. And I love the Andre Drummond signing.
Yeah, great bringing that up because that's exactly where I'm going to go. You're reading our mind this morning, D. Speaking with our very own D-Lam, and you can hear more of her thoughts on this tonight at 6 in a special free agency edition of Sixers All Access alongside Ray Dunn live here on The Fanatic. The other signings, Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, Kelly Oubre returning. How do you feel about those moves? Because they seem like they were met with a lot of positivity from the fan base as well.
I love it. I mean, obviously, I think you've heard me say this, Connor, that I think of all, and they've tried many different ones through the years, but I always felt that Andre Drummond was the best backup to Embiid that they've had in his tenure, and they had some good ones. I mean, Dwight Howard is not a savvy backup, and he was a little along, in his career at the time, and I didn't like him in the postseason. Amir Johnson did it. Obviously, Paul Reed has been the guy the last 2 years. So Drummond, to me, is great because he's also great with whatever minutes you need him to be out there, he's fine. And he's a rebounding machine, whether he plays 20, and his per 36 is always off the chart. So, and he's not old. The guy's barely 30. I think he's 29 right now. So I love that signing. Bringing Kelly Oubre back, I loved it. I didn't know if you'd be able to because I wasn't sure what the market would be. Obviously, he got a bit of a bump, but he didn't get, big. Somebody wasn't throwing big money at him. So I love that. I thought his defense became really, really good by the time the playoffs rolled around. And then the Eric Gordon. He's 35, but I'm fine with that. I hear he's a very, very good guy. He wants to play, which is a good thing. He gets a little upset if he's not playing. But you want guys like that. That means they're fiercely competitive.
I want to know the type of player that you think you want to hear as the next move. Not a name, but the type of player, if you were to say, this is the kind of guy that would take my optimism to an even higher level than it is this morning.
Well, for instance, I would say it kind of bums me out that Nicholas Batum does not want to be back because if you had that, I would say then fill out the roster with whatever you think. Because now I got everything I need. I don't know if that could be changed. He was a teammate of Paul George. Paul George speaks very, very highly of him. Obviously, Joel Embiid has spoken highly of Batum. But it says to me that, his family situation didn't love, him coming to Philadelphia. So either he'll retire or he'll find a place, I'm guessing, back in California.
All right, last one for you before we let you go, D. And again, you can hear D's thoughts in long form tonight at 6 p.m. right here on The Fanatic. But waking up to the Paul George news the first time you saw it, bigger reaction, more excited reaction, D-Lam or Jim Lam?
My dad's not a rah-rah guy, so I'm going to say probably me.
Were you standing up and cheering when you saw it? Did you give a little fist bump?
No, I remember saying yesterday, Connor, that, I'm ready for this team to be a contender again. Mm-hmm. It should have been that when Harden was here, and things just went sideways in that postseason. And so this gives you another opportunity, but we should have had that opportunity. But this, is, I would say, as good, if not better, in terms of Maxi's further along. Paul is a 9-time All-Star. And by the way, I asked a couple people, he doesn't mind being the second or third best player on a team. I like that. Doesn't mean he likes, taking big shots, and he is very difficult to defend in his jumpers, similar to what Harden was in his younger days. So I think this is going to work out just perfectly.
Well, that's great. Well, so did this interview, D. Thank you so much for the time, as always.
Thanks, D.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too. D-Lam, our very own, live there on the Comcast Business Hotline. I don't think we're going to talk to anybody today, Johnny, who is not elated with this move.
I hope I honestly, I sort of hope we don't.
I don't think we will. I don't know it's possible. D, as much as she wants the Sixers to win, she roots for the team in some circumstances, as much as you can, covering the team like she has. But she's very pragmatic and logical when it comes to stuff. She'll tell you her mind if she doesn't like something. She loves it. You love it. I love it. Tom does. All the people on the phone line, text line, and we'll get back to that. 610-632-0975. This is an awesome morning to be a Philadelphia 76ers fan, and we don't get all that many awesome mornings lately with that. So very excited. We'll continue coming up. We're going to replay that Woj sound that we played for SportsCenter at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. We're going to replay it coming up and dive a little bit deeper into his thoughts as to what the Sixers get in signing Paul George, and a lot more reaction to the move. So all of that coming up. I'm Connor Thomas, John Kincade to my left, Tom Alvord on the board, and we are back after this for more Kincade and Salciunas here on 97.5 The Fanatic. here on Kincade and Salciunas. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas as he travels internationally, heading over to Lithuania. We're wishing him continued safe travels. He had a little bit of a delay last night. John, you had a little delay getting back from Vegas.
A little delay?
And we had a little delay in this meeting that was supposed to be last night in L.A. between the Sixers and Paul George. But I'll tell you what, I don't care if it happens at 4:30 a.m., 5:30 a.m. I wouldn't have cared if we had done this show for 3 hours and then at 9 we got the news. All that matters is that the end result of the Sixers discussion out there in Los Angeles with Paul George is that there is a contract agreed to, and you have brought in a great wing player, the best free agent that is decided to sign here.
Bottom line.
All of it makes too much sense.
It's the best available. He's the best available free agent.
Yes.
And again, if you just look at it, its most bare bones, and we've had some other people giving us even better ideas. The idea about why it's better. But the bottom line is Tobias Harris was just replaced with Paul George.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you can't get hung up on the money. And believe me, I'm the person who would be most likely to get hung up on the money.
Right.
And you can't. You can't. You just have to say the max slot was going to be filled. Who do you want to fill with? I sure as hell didn't want Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
I did not.
This is the price of doing business. Was it amazing last year to have Tyrese Maxi on the deal that he was on play the way he did? Sure. That's unbelievable. That's the anomaly. To get players of this caliber, you're going to have to pay them. Unfortunately, this offseason, there weren't marquee first max contract guys. There weren't a bunch of 27, 28-year-olds running around that needed a deal that you knew could be a part of a championship team and be a third star. So your options were limited to veterans, and there was one that stood above the rest, and it was Paul George. And the fact that you went out there and executed a plan that we know this has been a thought process for the Sixers for a while now. The Paul George rumors did not just start yesterday. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, they're interested in Paul George. We've been hearing this for well over a month, but to execute it as quickly and as accurately as Daryl Morey and his crew did is a testament to taking advantage of what you're given.
Yes.
You can't say, oh, okay, now the Sixers are the favorites. This immediately puts them championship contender. No doubt, like everything's fixed. No, it's crazy to say that after one move or one day, or even with the role players you added to in Eric Gordon and Andre Drummond and Kelly Oubre. But what you can say is, with minimal options, the Sixers identified their best target. They went out there and acquired him. And now perspective looks a lot different as the sun rises in Philadelphia this morning than it did yesterday when you looked at the Sixers' chances.
And it is sunny.
It definitely
is.
It is
Beautiful today.
It's nice. Nice from the rain yesterday. We got some torrential downpour.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. There was rain yesterday.
Did you not notice?
Yeah, we just saw it pouring on the tarmac as we sat for 3 hours and 5 minutes.
You see out of the plane window while you're stuck out there?
Yeah,
that's all right. The waiting that everybody did yesterday ended up being worth it. So we just talked to D-Lam about it. She gave her thoughts. Very high praise for Paul George and what he can bring to this team. She was also in the sentiment of, I don't care about the money if you end up with the championship, which I think everybody should share that sentiment when you see these big contracts. How many times did we hear about, like, I'm just thinking about the Phillies long-term deals with Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and those long-term double-digit year contracts. It's like, oh, we're going to be paying them when they're 38, 39, 40. Do you think about that when you see Bryce Harper hit a ball 500 feet? Do you think about that when Trey Turner has the game-winning hit yesterday? No, you enjoy the moment and worry about what you're paying them when you get there. And if you get enough...
Well, if you get a title...
Exactly.
If you get a title, no one will give a flip. If this Phillies team doesn't deliver another World Series appearance, and actually a championship,
yes,
it may become an issue later down the line, but nobody will look at the moments of Bryce Harper. They're burned into your psyche.
And that's what this Paul George deal is going to be. Could it look bad in 4 years? Possibly. But does it look great this morning? Yes.
Right.
And that's all we need to worry about at this point in time.
Real quick, you said it could look bad in 4 years. And that's very possible, right? With his injury history, with his age. They're still in a pretty solid spot 4 years from now, even 3 years now. At the end of this Paul George contract, Tyrese Maxey's what, 27 years old?
Yeah.
You still have that 2028 first-round pick if they decide to hold on to it, and they might not. We'll see what moves are made. But, like, we could be 4 years from now with a 2028 Clippers pick, which could very well be top 5 in that draft, and now a max slot open 4 years from now with a 27-year-old Tyrese Maxey still on this team. It's not like and obviously the focus here is to win in the next 2 years. I understand that, but all hope is not lost in the future as well with the 76ers with this move.
And that's why it was paramount that you made the move for Paul George, because anyone
we
else...
don't pay for Paramount.
No, you don't?
Oh, okay.
No, that's Paramount Plus.
Okay.
Paramount in the definition sense of the word. It was hugely important because of you not having to give up assets to do it. Like, you looked at a situation where there were other players. You want Lauri Markkanen? Fine. You're going to pay a premium. You want Brandon Ingram? Fine. You're going to pay a premium. Like, you want Jimmy Butler? You're going to pay a lot in assets to get those guys out of their current situations, whether they want to come here or not. Paul George was the best available option, maybe fit-wise, compared to all of those guys. And he was also the best available option through free agency that you didn't have to empty the coffers for. So when you get in that situation where in 3 years, fingers crossed, God willing, you have a ring, and you're worrying about, okay, well, how do we figure out the next step, the next thing post-Paul George contract, you're not looking at the dollars. You're looking at, hey, we have all these assets. We did what we wanted to do. We got a great player for it. That is the price of doing business in today's NBA, and the Sixers were willing to pay that price for a guy they absolutely should have. 610-632-0975 is the phone number to jump into the program today. You can call, you can text. We've had a lot of reaction. We're going to get back to that in 1 second. But if you missed it, the top of the 8 o'clock hour, we played some audio from Woj on SportsCenter, his initial takeaways from the signing of Paul George and what that deal means for the Sixers and their contention in the Eastern Conference. Go ahead and take a listen one more time to what Woj had to say.
The Sixers' willingness to go to a 4-year deal for Paul George at 34 years old, something that the Clippers were not willing to do, and the chance to play with Joel Embiid, with Tyrese Maxi, an opportunity to be now on a championship contender, to go to Philly, try to win that city's first title since 1983. Paul George was at a meeting last night, very late in L.A. With Phillies management, with Dr. J, Julius Erving, and he committed to the Sixers before he left that room. And now, Paul George comes to a Sixer team that's trying to overtake the Boston Celtics, and it gives them the big two-way wing player that you need to play against Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown.
Oh my! I can't tell you the last time that I could, beyond a shadow of a doubt, say that the Philadelphia 76ers have a two-way wing that can defend the best player on the other team.
I could argue you've never said it in your lifetime.
It's very possible. See, Tobias Harris was supposed to be some type of that guy.
Yeah, but he had parts of that. No.
Yeah, pieces.
And he showed you pieces of that.
Right. You believed at some point maybe he could be that guy.
Correct. But seriously, do you think you've been able to say that in your lifetime as a Sixers fan?
Not really. I'm trying to rack my brain and see if I'm forgetting anybody.
I mean, you guys are youngsters.
I mean, Jimmy was a very good defender.
Jimmy was a little pea in a cup. I mean, a cup of coffee.
Sure, yeah, but I'm saying, we had it not for a very long amount of time, but when he was here, I had faith in Jimmy doing it.
You had faith.
Tobias could do it. It's just the issue sporadically, and obviously you didn't get much from him on the offensive side. But no, it's a level of what Paul. Now look, if you go into a 7-game series with the Celtics and you expect Paul George to shut down one of these two guys for all 7 games, I think that's foolish. But he has the chance to do it in spurts in a longer period of time than maybe a guy like Tobias could do, and he also can fill it up offensively at the same time.
That's the thing. Could you have put, if you had matched up with the Celtics this past year, could you have put Tobias Harris on Jason Tatum? Sure. And would he have done a fine job? Probably. Relative to how people defend one of the better players in basketball, I don't think Tobias Harris would have been, beat like a drum by Jason Tatum. But guess what? He's going to give you, 6 points and 3 boards on top of that and not very impactful moments. That was the calling card of Tobias Harris. Okay, he'll give you one thing, but he doesn't give you the full package enough for you to compete, especially with that being a max contract slot. Paul George is going to give you all of that. Now, he might only give you that for a portion of the season, depending on how healthy he's going to be and how much you want to protect him from being hurt in the postseason. This is another guy you're going to have to manage the workload and be smart about the way that you approach this. But when he's on the floor, he's going to be an impactful player. By the way, Johnny, last year, Paul George, 74 games played. So,
and that was the first time in 5 years?
Yes,
he's played that.
So.
But there was also the years of COVID where there was less games and everything.
But he only missed 8 games last year. Compare that to Joel Embiid, and that is as healthy as it gets. So there is a world where he's healthy and impactful and fits perfectly, and this gets done. It's not a guarantee. It is still a gamble based on age and health, but it is the best bet you could have made.
And the big thing here with PG, like obviously he's probably going to miss some time over these next 4 years with this contract. That's a given.
He's not going to play every game.
Even if he plays like 60, 65 games for you this year, it's not ideal. Of course, you want him to play 70, 75 plus.
If you told me 65 right now, I'll sign in blood.
65, and then the bigger thing here, towards the end of the season, if he's healthy.
Ready.
That's the big thing. Is if he's healthy and hopefully Joel Embiid is healthy in the playoffs as well, I don't care if he only plays 60 games for me because that gives you a chance against any team in the Eastern or Western Conference if they're both playing at their best and healthy come playoff time.
Hard to disagree, but let's see what our friends are saying on the phone line and text line. 610-632-0975 is how you get in. You can call us. You can text us. So what are our texters saying, Tommy?
Yeah, we got Edwin here. Good morning, John, Connor, and Tom. Edwin from Philly. Just got to say, wow, in all caps. They got it done. I understand there are people that are skeptical of the move, but like you guys said, look at it from the perspective of who are you replacing the con artist number 12 with? You're replacing him with a 9-time All-Star who has cachet around the NBA. I get there are risks involved. What else were you going to do? It was a no-brainer to get him. Let's see what happens next. All caps. Welcome to Philly, PG.
I love it. I wonder how much he loves being here because I did read a ton of the preparation for Paul George.
Yeah.
And how much he is sort of obsessed with the West Coast. And I wonder a little bit about that, how he's going to adjust to that. It's very, very different.
Well, he can live in University City and be on the west coast of the Schuylkill, and that's basically the same thing.
I have friends of mine who work in LA full time, and they live in other states. Their family lives in Arizona. Their family lives in Nashville. They go to LA to work, and then they go home to another state. They can't handle it. I just wonder. It's a big shocker. LA's a big shocker. He loves it.
Well,
he loves that.
You know what?
It's
really
a big shocker.
What really helps you is when the city
money?
loves you. Well, yeah. Also making the $53 million estimated.
And by the way, he's going to be able to keep. Even with our bad taxes, he's going to be able to keep significantly more money than the same contract in L.A.
Absolutely.
Because God knows Paul George needs it. But what we need here is we need a two-way wing that can play, and we got that in Paul George. So a lot of stuff still to react to. We're going to get more reaction. Go back to the phone lines coming up. Don't forget, coming up at 9 a.m., if you're jonesing for some Eagles talk, we have Andrew DiCecco of Inside the Birds, who's going to be live with us for the entire 9 o'clock hour. That will not preclude us from continuing to talk a little bit about the Paul George move, the big news of the day. But we do have some interesting Eagles conversation coming up at the top of the hour. But coming up next, a little bit of a deeper dive into your responses and just more flat-out excitement reaction to the Paul George signing a 4-year max contract with your Philadelphia 76ers. Johnny, it's a good day to be doing this.
It is a good day. On 3.5 hours sleep, it's still a good day.
Well, we'll get you to your nap soon enough. We're coming up on, another fun segment, so we'll get into that. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas here. Tom Albert on the board. Of course, John Kincade to my left, right here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Philadelphia Union Soccer.
Ua has a step on Aviles. Christoph John Ua.
timing to be able to sit in this chair. Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, who is on his way to Lithuania right now. Be alongside you, Johnny, and talking about this huge of a signing. Like,
it's big news.
What a godsend, not just for content purposes for us, but for the Philadelphia 76ers and what this offseason could have become. I mean, D-Lam, who we talked to earlier this hour, brought it up, and the chips falling in a way, or I guess like the dominoes falling correctly for Paul George to be here. He could have stayed in L.A. if they were willing to give him that extra year.
And they weren't.
They
were adamant that they were not doing that.
He could have been traded to the Warriors if the Warriors wanted to make that move. Like, there were a bunch of pitfalls that could have made it, that could have preempted Paul George to the Sixers. I don't want people to take that as me saying, oh, well, the Sixers were his third or fourth or fifth option. Like,
I think the Warriors would have been a pick above.
Yeah.
They would have chosen.
Certainly possible. Steph Curry is a guy that a lot of guys in the league still want to play with, and that's an organization that knows what they're doing. I mean, heck, you can argue the Clippers are in a pretty darn good spot if Paul George is there.
If he's there, yeah.
And you trust the makeup of those guys. And I know how you feel about James Harden. I don't blame you on that. But my point is, you needed stuff to fall your way to even have this opportunity. That's why it's even sweeter. Because it's like, man, they had a couple things break their way. They took advantage the second they saw they had a chance. They got it done quickly. And now you have a totally different outlook on this offseason. It could have been bleak. If Paul George re-signs with the Clippers or goes to the Warriors,
I don't know what they do.
What do you do?
No, they would have overdone to get Brandon Ingram.
Oversold for Brandon Ingram or Lauri Markkanen.
Markkanen would have intrigued me.
But still, you're going to move multiple firsts.
If you don't get outbid by other teams, by the way.
Right, and I don't think they have the best pack. They would not have had the best package to be able to get him. If Markkanen's on the market, there's no way the Sixers would have been able to come up with the if teams like Oklahoma City, Houston, or others wanted him. They would have been able
they
to
don't
put
have
together.
A chance, no.
They would have been able to put together much better packages.
Definitely, and the Sixers don't have to deal with that problem because we wake up to the Paul George news this morning, and you all woke up to that as well. So I want to go to the text line in just a second, get a little bit more information from our friends on how they're feeling, this fan base. Are you as fired up as Johnny and I? We'd love to hear from you, 610-632-0975. Call or text. So I want to remind you real quick, it's a Fanatic Monday here on The Fanatic, presented by Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com for flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. Tommy, what do we have on the text line?
All right, so we've had a lot of positivity.
Oh, no.
How about some negativity for you guys here?
I can't believe it. Okay.
No name, unfortunately, but just a quick, simple text. Sixers are not beating the Celtics, so why even bother with Paul George?
So why even bother? So you're going to give up a max contract slot?
Yeah.
You're going to leave that vacant, lose it.
First of all, you don't know they're not beating the Celtics. Like, I love this whole assumption that, okay, the Celtics were this juggernaut team. They got one. The floodgates are going to open. Denver didn't win last year. Didn't I hear that Denver's championship was going to be the floodgates for Nikola Jokic to just keep winning?
I think I had heard Bob or someone else point out that NBA champions don't advance to the conference finals, like for a string.
Right.
Next year. Things happen.
We got caught up with this. Basketball got completely changed in the minds of this generation of fans because of Steph Curry and because of LeBron James. Because there were multiple times that those guys had dynastic runs. And you assumed, because two all-time greats were able to do it, dynasties are a thing in the NBA. It's not as likely as you think it is. And the Celtics are a very good basketball team. But today, on July 1st, I can't tell you the Sixers aren't beating them or that they're going to beat them. I can't tell you either. What I can tell you is Paul George puts you in the conversation.
Yes.
And that's as good as you can do on the first day of the legal tampering period. You can't ask for any more than saying, hey, we have a shot. So I don't think, did you say they're guaranteed to be better than Boston?
No, I never said it.
I think I said it. I don't think Tom said it. So I'm not in disagreement with that no-name texter there, but I'm just saying now's not the time for that conversation. It could feel a lot different. If we had had that conversation 3 days ago even, we would have been put in a mental institution. Now, at least it's a conversation. Who knows what it is in a week, a month?
Look, it improves their chances of beating Boston next year.
Absolutely.
Probably the next year after that also.
Yes. So what were you going to do? Just like lay down and die?
No, you absolutely were not.
All right, let's get another text here, Tommy.
Okay. We got another. Shane from Delaware here. I love the Oubre signing. Definitely a steal, but Eric Gordon is a joke. I would have rather spent the money on a young guy with potential than a 35-year-old who shoots slightly above average from three, cannot defend, cannot pass, and has been a net negative for the last decade. Total stupidity with this signing.
Total stupidity? I love that they listen. I don't think they're listening to the right people. I don't think they're listening to the right people. And I'm not talking my opinion on basketball. I'm talking about informed opinion on basketball. And again, I have the picture right on my phone that I took in the sports book the other night where 8 teams on Thursday night had better championship odds than the 76ers. This morning, 1 does. I don't get it. I don't get
the other part of that is spend the money on a younger. He's on a veteran minimum contract. Like, spend the money. He's not the one on a $53 million a year deal. You're paying him peanuts. Does he work out? I don't know. Is he a player that a lot of people have wanted in this city for a long time? Yes, he was one of those always should be a Sixer guys. Now, it's different at 35 than it was at 30, than it was at 28. So he's not the same player, but spacing is important. You know what we heard about last year when they made the move for Nick Batum? This guy's old. He's going to retire after this. What does he really add? Nick Batum ended up being a huge part of this team because he filled the need. The Sixers need space.
Now, breaking sports
my goodness.
news from 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Sorry.
Whoa, what?
Sorry to interrupt you, Connor, but this is some big stuff here. According to Woj, he had it first, not Shams. Philadelphia 76ers all-star guard Tyrese Maxi has agreed in principle on a 5-year, $204 million maximum contract extension.
Congratulations to Tyrese Maxi.
Couldn't be more deserved.
No, absolutely not. Better every year, adding another layer to his talents, constantly working on his game, great ambassador for the team.
Yes.
It's freaking awesome for Tyrese.
Not surprising. We all knew that this was coming. It was dessert. This is a moment, though, and we will open this up. In addition to having Andrew DiCecco join us live in studio starting the 9 o'clock hour and for the entire 9 o'clock hour, we will also open up, if you would like to laud Tyrese Maxi, that is a kid that absolutely deserves it. And it's not so much surprise that the contract got done. It was basically a guarantee. But seeing it in stone, well, agreed to in principle, so he can't deserve it more. I can't think of an athlete in this city right now that I'd rather see get that type of deal than Tyrese Maxi. So, it's reason to celebrate, Johnny. More stuff on top of the Paul George news. Man. Daryl Morey, does this guy sleep?
Well, he did. He was in L.A. having dinner and drinks and probably signing a deal.
Get that man a coffee and get him on the phone with someone else who can make the Sixers better because this guy is on a heater right now, and the Sixers are having a heck of a start to the offseason. We're going to talk about another team that had a strong offseason and still in the midst of it with the Philadelphia Eagles coming up as Andrew DiCecco of Inside the Birds joins us next. I'm Connor Thomas sitting in for Andrew Salciunas, John Kincade alongside me, Tom Alvord on the board, and we are back after this here for more Kincade Salciunas on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
o'clock hour. Andrew DiCecco of Inside the Birds joins us. Now, we will still sprinkle in a little bit of the big news of the day. Paul George signing. We just found out Tyrese Maxi got a max contract extension with the Sixers that was absolutely expected to happen, but we're not going to neglect the Birds. I mean, the Sixers could, sign every free agent available. And the Eagles are still going to be where they are in this town. There's no fighting that. And that's why it's great to have you. Andrew, you're going to be with us for the 9 o'clock hour today, tomorrow, and Wednesday.
Wait a minute. Who made this decision? Oh, yes, Scott did.
Yeah.
It's good to have him.
But we're on board 100% because we're going to hear some great stuff about where the Eagles are at in a kind of strange point of the offseason. I don't think the average fan thinks about this time of year and understands truly what's going on with the team, what they're working on right now. It's just kind of that dead zone where you focus on other things until they start training camp. So I guess let's start with what's going on with the Birds right now. What are the big storylines to know that are facing the team?
Yeah, so right now it's really interesting, Connor, because this is where players are finalizing their training regimens and they're gearing up for training camp. They're correcting whatever they needed to work on during OTAs and minicamp, which is why that was so crucial, because you're really installing a brand new, ideologies defensively and offensively. So you're able to fine-tune those things. And then some of the storylines that are going to be really prevalent as we move forward here are who's going to be the right guard on this football team. Tyler Steen is the favorite right now, and the Eagles would love nothing more than for him to, win that job running away. But Mekhi Becton's also there. You also have to look at the third wide receiver spot. Who's going to step up and seize that opportunity?
Right.
And then I think defensively, you look at linebacker situation, which I know we've covered extensively here, and then the defensive backfield, which is my favorite storyline going into training camp, because there are a number of young defensive backs vying for opportunities, and I think that competition and the new coaching staff that's there, I think defensive backs coach Christian Parker is going to be a crucial add, is going to help ultimately elevate that unit.
You learn a lot about football, especially Eagles football, listening to Andrew. I wrote something down that you said there that I'm confused by. You said they now have time to correct and fine-tune things that went down at minicamp. How are they doing that? Are they doing it with video study? Are they doing it like how does that exactly work?
Well, you take notes, and you're going over the tablet when you're there, and you're in communication with your coaches, and then you're able to kind of take that and parlay that into some off-season, tweaking, for lack of a better term, where you're able to kind of, whether it's technique-oriented, John, whether it's different nuances that they're looking to implement, how they want to execute their vision. I think that you're able to that's why it was so crucial. You're able to take that and then learn that, work on it with your trainers. And I think that's going to be – they made it so that when you get to training camp, there's not that tutorial, and you're able to hit the ground running because every practice is so critical.
So something else Eagles players are doing besides training is talking, and that's fine. I mean, people are going to be asked questions throughout the offseason. We've had some helpful sound bites. We've had some not-so-helpful sound bites, especially considering how last year ended. And John brought this up yesterday, knowing that we'd have you in. A statement by Devontae Smith, an answer to a question about the head coaching position and what
the
Nick
30,000-foot role.
Exactly. So, Johnny?
And he says, Devontae Smith says, it gives him time to do a lot more, to see a lot more, and I think that's a good thing. When the head man has the power to put his hands on everything, to see everything, it makes it easier on himself. It makes it easier on us. Because sometimes what we may see, he may not see because he was focused on something. But for him to be able to look over everything now, he's not blind with something now. Now we can talk to him because he knows what's going on with everything. There's more from Saquon Barkley, but I want you to react to that. What do you hear there? To me, it seems like a player who's very positive on his head coach.
Oh, absolutely. And this kind of echoes what I've said over these airwaves, what I've written about, what a lot of folks have written about, in that, when you're – I don't know that the CEO terminology is taken the way that it should. I think that's looked at sometimes as a stigma rather than – what is actually a term that a lot of coaches in the NFL, they have. That's the branding. But he's going to be able to oversee and preside over the entire team, which is really what you need. I think sometimes when you're an offensive-minded head coach like he is, you fixate on that area, and maybe other areas get neglected. I'm not saying that's the case, but those are certain things that you have to be mindful of. And now he'll be able to kind of have that 30,000-foot view, as he called it, where you can kind of take a step back, make sure the culture's where it needs to be so that you don't have that unraveling like you had late last season, and make sure that the defense is where they need to be and the offense is flowing as it should. And I think that's going to be beneficial to all parties.
Listen to what Saquon said, too. The role he had last year is foreign to me. I can't speak to it. But in the couple months that I've been here, I've done nothing but I have nothing but praise for him. The way he handles everything has been great. The environment is one where you want to go out and win and compete. And to be with the Eagles is a blessing, and I'm happy to have him as my coach. This worries me a little bit in the relationship with him and Jalen Hurts. Because I said to Connor yesterday, I believe those two statements from two very prominent players on the team on the same side of the ball as Jalen Hurts, they're both effusive in their praise of the head coach, where Jalen will not budge on giving him even a nod of credit. To me, this makes it sound personal. Well, and it's personal between the two guys. It's not professional because two other guys, stars on that side of the ball, are effusive in praising Nick Sirianni.
Well, that's fair to say, but when has Jalen ever really offered ringing endorsements for really anything? He's kind of stoic in his approach. He doesn't
Brian Johnson got some a good amount of love when he got hired.
There's a difference between a guy he grew up with and just a coach of a football team.
And that's personal too.
The only time I can ever, for perspective, the only time I can ever recall Jalen sort of being either in awe of something or offering ringing endorsements was when they got Julio Jones, and he was like, "Wow, I'm throwing to Julio," and things like that. But other than, you can't really go back and pinpoint any instance. I know you mentioned Brian Johnson, but really, he's really stoic. He doesn't offer much in the way of sound bites. That's kind of how he is. I don't read anything into that personally until there's something to talk about, which is in training camp. If that bleeds into training camp, okay, well, then we have legitimate conversation and some quells for concern.
Yeah, and it could have been as simple as because we've played the soundbite a bunch of Jalen Hurts giving the long-winded answer with a lot of ums and ahs when asked about Nick Sirianni and how he's attacking his new role here and stuff like that. But he hasn't had a chance to really speak since that, and that could have been as simple as, well, I don't really have too much to say because I haven't seen that much of it because we're just in minicamp. So
it was his third chance, though.
Yeah.
To give him, he had multiple at the end of the year, both times, including one of them with Jeff McClain, where he purposely went out of his way to go, really? His job's in jeopardy? I hadn't heard that.
It's fair to bring up. It's totally fair to bring up. But I lean towards where Andrew is, and that's just a personality difference between Hurts and the other guys. And we'll see if it
could be. But we'll learn more as to what that could mean in the coming weeks in training camp. That, like I said, if that bleeds into training camp and you're starting to see something there that maybe they're not meshing, okay, well, then you may have something.
Now, I want to ask you about this because that's a great point of praise by Devontae Smith, saying that Nick Sirianni has that great view. He doesn't have blind spots anymore, all of that stuff. Let's just play through a scenario and your judgment of this based on what you've seen so far with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio in the building. Nick Sirianni sees something wrong with the offense. Nick Sirianni sees something wrong with the defense midseason, and he wants to make a correction. Does he have the power to go to Kellen Moore and say, we're doing this different on offense? And maybe not just does he have the power, but will he take that approach? Or is he resigned to allowing these guys run those separate units of the team on their own?
Great question. I think he absolutely does. As the head coach of the Eagles, he's going to have the full say on everything. And anything that happens, he's going to sign off on. Okay. His fingerprints will be on everything. Now,
could overrule Vic Fangio?
Well, as the head coach, you have to. That has to be. There has to be some sort of structure there.
Sure.
You can't just kind of go into it and just fall back and let things operate as they are. You're the head coach. You get final say. Now, I think there's going to be a lot more trust in Vic Fangio, knowing that he has a 40-year resume, and you're kind of going to give him that leniency and that benefit of the doubt that he's going to get things right on his side of the ball. But again, as the head coach, you're going to get final say in everything.
That makes sense, and it's not exactly what I want to hear.
It's not exactly what I want to hear either. I don't want him anywhere near the defense. I want him nowhere near it.
I don't really want him that close to the offense, if I'm being honest. I think you brought in these coordinators to solve a major issue last year that largely involved Nick Sirianni, and it's not like put him in a broom closet like they did with Howie Roseman in the Chip Kelly years, but the less impact I want Kellen Moore to have the authority over the way this offense is run. And I get why that's tricky with the head coach title being given to a guy because the structure is important. So that's what I think could be a big sticking point. Does it seem like something that has been a balancing act for them to figure out this early in the offseason, or have they gone into it with this understanding and handled it well?
Well, to be clear, Kellen Moore is running the show offensively, but it's tough to gauge whether or not it's been a difficult balance between Nick Sirianni, that push and pull, if you will.
Yeah.
I think we're going to, like anything, we're going to learn more in training camp when you see them more in the thick of things and you're able to kind of glean more. But right now, you're seeing Kellen Moore be able to kind of do his thing, install what he needs to, and get that time with the players during OTAs and minicamp. And then we're going to have to find out how that goes from there.
I'm just anxious to watch this all play out.
Me too.
Because it's like I feel very confident that they'll all find a way to work together.
Winning helps everything.
It does, but I'm so Kellen Moored up, like in just thinking of all the opportunity that he's got with this offense. If I said to you right now the Eagles are going to be a top 3 offense, would you scoff?
Not at all.
Okay. If I told you they were going to be a top 12 defense.
Yeah, I might.
That's more hesitating.
I might have to hit you with some truth serum there.
Oh, boy. Okay, that's fine, though.
Top half of the league? Top 16?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
And because with Vic Fangio, with the different position coaches there, I think that they're going to be able to have the defensive backs communicating better. I think they're going to be able to accentuate the second level and maximize the talent that they have there. It's ultimately going to come down to pass rush, because I think that's the biggest question mark defensively. You have on paper, it has probably higher upside, but there's also players there that haven't proven it. And in the case of someone like a Josh Sweat, who outside of getting a sack in the wild card game, he hadn't had one since week 9. So you don't know if that's something that's going to continue on next season.
So you brought up the defensive backs. I know you just had a conversation with Isaiah Rodgers. We're going to ask you about like some of the conversations you've been having with players as we continue on through this. But I want to do the first kind of crossover Eagles Paul George question, because you saw the big news. Okay, first, how excited are you? I know you root for all these teams. You cover the Eagles, but like you want the Sixers to win.
I love the Sixers
fan.
Yeah.
So what does this mean to you?
I was over the moon, and I kind of, when I went to bed, I had the sense that I felt like something was going to happen.
So you did.
And, I get up, 5 o'clock. I see the news. And, I mean, look, the Sixers, they needed to add a superstar. Daryl Morey had to do something major here, and this, to me, was the only course of action. He found a way to make it work. You're getting another superstar to pair with Tyrese Maxi and Joel Embiid. You're giving the Sixers a chance to compete and contend with the Boston Celtics. I mean, how could you find anything against this signing? I mean, yes, there are some injury concerns. Obviously, pairing Embiid and Paul George. I know he had the left knee soreness last season that was sort of persistent. But I mean, he gives you a chance he takes you to the next level. The Sixers got exponentially better, and you have to tip your hat to Daryl Morey, because I know going into it there's some trepidation. He was under some skepticism whether or not he was going to be able to be aggressive and make the moves that necessary to take him to the next level. And I think he deserved the benefit of the doubt to give him the chance to see how things are going to play out and let it take its course. And I think he's done some really good things thus far.
My trepidation's based on age.
Yeah, well,
the age of the roster.
Well, that's fair, but you also have to look at like the Kelly Oubre signing. I think that's tremendous. Someone who. He pretty much bet on himself last year on a minimum deal.
He won the bet, and he didn't cash in.
Right.
He only cashed in half the ticket. I know Johnny Vegas is out there.
I think it told you that we value Kelly Oubre more than the league does.
Maybe we should. He got a veteran minimum contract as a 20-point per game scorer coming out of Charlotte.
I'm absolutely shocked.
It's a good spot to be.
Yeah,
there's something there.
And
we
don't know if there are other teams, and he liked the prospects of playing in Philadelphia, and maybe wants to parlay that.
So he took a huge discount?
We may see that as the offseason goes on with Paul George here now.
Yeah, he could see this as an opportunity to parlay that into something more substantial down the road, given the pieces that they have there and how he's going to be utilized.
Okay.
So I'm not naive to the ways of sports fandom in the city. There are people who like the Eagles significantly more than they like the Sixers. But I'm sure there's a lot of folks tuning in to hear your thoughts that are also interested in what this Paul George move could mean for the Sixers. So let me make sure I lay this out properly. Paul George for the Sixers fills a much-needed spot that they've spent years not being able to find the right guy for. He also elevates this team to another level where they can compete with teams that they probably were not on the same level as last year. If you had to say the Paul George move for the Eagles this offseason, what move was it? The player that elevates them into that status that they weren't at last year and fits in a need. It might not be a perfect comparison, but I'm trying to think of the level of signing that you can put in the same stratosphere as the Paul George deal.
Saquon Barkley, but I would look at it from an effect standpoint, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Because I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson, to me, was the Eagles' most impactful offseason addition, and I think that's going to be obviously going to be the case here for the Sixers.
So Saquon Barkley from the fill the need, I
Just
guess.
because it's that big splash.
Right.
And he is going, and to be clear, I do think he's going to have a pretty significant impact for the offense, but I just think what C.J. Gardner-Johnson brings from an energy, from an attitude, and from a ability to take the football away, which the Eagles were very deficient in last season, is going to really make the difference.
That's interesting. I love that answer.
That is a good answer. If it all, and again, the one thing that I do not like, really it's like the only thing I can just in my head here today is I hate it that for two of our top three, we have to say, well, when healthy. That when healthy disclaimer, I don't believe any other team speaks about their top three guys in those terms.
The team he just came from definitely does out in L.A. The Clippers are definitely having that conversation.
Yeah, well, Kawhi is definitely a guy.
James Harden as well.
I think Kawhi wants to play 50 games a year. Then play the playoffs.
It's not the most ideal situation.
I think it's what he wants to do, though. I honestly believe.
I don't think Kawhi Leonard has emotion. I don't know that guy has had a want or a need in his life. He's just
I agree with. You heard him try to laugh.
Yeah, he wants mid-range buckets and he wants
he could be a psychopath.
I would say cyborg. I try to be a little bit nicer.
See, I think more like psychopath.
But Criminal Minds episode, maybe?
Absolutely. What are they, empaths? Or I don't know what word they use on there. I don't know.
But let's get back to the Eagles because that's a good comparison between where the Sixers and the Eagles are at. I think the Eagles are much more in the contention window, like guaranteed. Is there a way, right? Let's just look back to last year. Is there a way that we end up coming out of this season? I know you can't see everything. There's no crystal ball over there as far as I can see, but that we come out of the season saying they've completely collapsed again, that they completely fell short. Maybe they don't make it to the NFC Championship game. Maybe it's a second-round playoff exit. Maybe they don't win the Super Bowl. But isn't there enough to say that the Eagles are locked into having a strong season?
I think so. I would be highly surprised if there was another collapse, just given the veteran coaches presiding over both sides of the ball, Nick Sirianni being able to take that full scope view of the team and make sure that the culture is where it needs to be. So there is no dissension or anything like that should they hit a rough patch. And the talent that they've adding a player like Saquon takes the pressure off your quarterback. I think Dallas Goedert's going to be a big beneficiary to having someone like Kellen Moore, so it's going to ultimately elevate Jalen Hurts' game, and he's going to utilize the mid-range game. I just don't foresee the Eagles hitting a skid like they did last season. And if they do, I have the sense I have is that they're equipped to handle it. And I think that everything they've added gives me I'm pretty confident in saying that I think they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs.
The thing is they had to be 10-1 to have that skid.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have that great start to have that skid. Are you telling me you don't see a potential skid happening, or do you tell me that you believe they're back to it doesn't have to be 10-1. It could be a 9-3 start. It could be a 10-2 start. You're telling me you're very confident that that's where they'll be sitting?
Now, I think to be clear that the beginning of the season may be a little turbulent because anytime you're trying out something new and you're working out the kinks, sometimes that takes a little bit of time, especially when you're starting the season in Brazil and not at home.
Thanks, Jeffrey Lurie, for that one.
So I would say, preach patience here, knowing that, the quarterback is having a lot thrown at him right now and the offense in general. So you may not see it come out of the gate swinging for the first few weeks, but I think that they're going to hit their stride and they're going to be that team that everyone's talking about come December and January.
You take your best home game opportunity and you give it away to go play a game against an incredible opponent in a spot where nobody was asking for the NFL to come play.
That is such a tough spot for the Eagles.
It's ridiculous that they did this.
Do you think it's a tough spot for the Packers, too? I know it's supposed to be an away game. It's not Lincoln Financial Field.
No, it's easier for them. They look at it as a plus.
I think there's more pressure on the Eagles.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's their home
Probably
game.
was going to be anyway, considering the way the season ended.
The Packers are saying, We get to play the Eagles in Brazil at a neutral site.
Yeah,
instead
we
of
don't
going
have to go to the link. Yeah,
a prime time game at the link.
Yeah.
No,
I get what you're saying.
This was a dumb decision by Jeffrey Lurie. A stupid decision by Jeffrey Lurie. Stupid. It's
you can
unnecessary.
Absolutely make that argument.
It's unnecessary.
Here's what I will say. I love something Andrew said. He might be my favorite person in this room right now.
Well,
when
better
it comes, You're up there, Johnny. You're top 2.
There's only 2 others.
But you said something about the learning curve and something we wanted to bring up with you. So we'll talk about that. Is there room for patience with this new offensive scheme that Kellen Moore's instituting? We'll talk about that coming up. You can jump in on the phone line, 610-632-0975. Call in, text line. We always do this. I'd love to get some text questions for Andrew. If you have any about the Eagles, wondering what's going on right now, you can do that. We're also going to mix in a couple of text questions about the Paul George and Tyrese Maxi news since we have other big news. So a lot of great stuff. Andrew DiCecco stays with us for the next segment. I'm Connor Thomas in for Andrew Salciunas on Kincade Salciunas. Back after this, you're on The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Does Daryl
perfect day for you.
Yeah, 4 for 4 so far. 4 more days to go, though. I definitely will do it, and I did come close there, but Tom caught me.
I know you did.
Back live here with you, Kincade Salciunas on 97.5 The Fanatic. I'm Connor Thomas, sitting in for Andrew Salciunas. That was the voice of John Kincade, who always joins me to my left. And Andrew DiCecco of Inside the Birds is with us. Now, I went 4 for 4 on not talking over the sponsors, but I'm only batting 500 on the get to work safe because I didn't say I hope everyone got to work safe at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. So hopefully everyone made it. Andrew Salciunas
everybody did.
Always does that when he sits in this chair. But we traded an Andrew for an Andrew. And honestly, I think we got the better end of this deal.
I'm telling you, he's
How about touching that one?
He's bringing it.
Now, I love something that you said last segment, Andrew, about the having patience for the start of the season with the new scheme. Because that is strongly the camp I find myself in. And I know from times that we've talked about it, John and Salciunas, I'll call him by his last name to avoid confusion, are both ready for this team to hit the ground running. Can you just talk a little bit about what the learning curve would be like, or is like, as they go through this, and why you believe patience is deserved?
It's going to be pretty significant. You know, when you're looking at the different nuances and subtleties that are added to the offense, when you hear a quarterback say that it's 95% new, I mean, that's wholesale changes. And I think that needs to be taken into account when you're assessing the early part of the season and some of the different wrinkles that teams are going to throw and you have to adjust and counter with. They're going to see different formations, bunches. You're going to see more jet motion. And you have to be. Everybody has to be on the same page here, and the quarterback has to be comfortable in delivering the football, reading defenses, and doing the different things that he's going to have to do with the new structure there. And that's not going to be instantaneous. He's not going to play a lot in the preseason. All these reps in training camp are really going to be his live opportunity to kind of get that corrected and nailed down. And then defensively, you're going to see some different things like edge rushers dropping into coverage, which I've talked to Tom about this before. When you're talking about someone like Hassan Reddick, well, maybe he's not as proficient as doing that as some of the other players that they've added in that area. So you're going to see that a little bit more. That's going to take some time to adapt to. You're going to have a lot of new pieces on the back end that are going to take some time, particularly some new pieces. It's not all going to come together instantaneously. It's going to have to take a little bit of time to gel. But there's enough talent there that I think that'll be able to overcome any sort of a skid.
So if 95% of the offense is different, it looks different. For the average fan, would you think of the top 2 or 3 things that you're going to see immediately that you're going to go, wow, that looks so completely different to what we've gotten used to?
Motion, for one.
I love that. I love that.
And something simple, but mid-range throws. I mean, the middle of the field was very underutilized for the past couple of seasons, and I think that's an area where someone like a Dallas Goedert or even a running back like Saquon Barkley, the Eagles have not thrown the football to their running backs very much. I think last season DeAndre Swift was a very proficient receiving running back. He had 39 receptions. That's an area where I think that both Saquon and Dallas can help and also alleviate some of the burden from Jalen, who doesn't have to become overly reliant on those shot plays down the field and things like that. Those are the 2 areas that I think can be the biggest difference.
So, Johnny, you just heard the argument laid out. I know there are people in the fan base that feel the way that you and Andrew Salciunas do about needing to get off to a hot start. And it's not just like, oh, they don't deserve patience because they're professionals. They should be able to figure it out. This team may struggle if they start slow. We've heard that narrative that they need to get off to a hot start.
I think they do.
What are your thoughts on Andrew asking for patience?
I think that it's okay for Andrew to ask for patience because he's an analyst. I think that for the majority of the fan base that lived through the 10-1 collapse, patience my backside. No, not with this kind of talent, not with this kind of opportunity to go do something special in franchise history. I will be patient to a level. If they're winning and not clicking on all cylinders, I'll be patient. If this is costing them, you should not lose. The Eagles are better than the Packers. I don't care what he tries to spin to me.
But the Packers have continuity from a coaching standpoint.
They do.
And personnel.
I always will say, though, the better team. They should be able to prepare them. They should be able to be ready for this. And if that means they got to actually not have Club Sirianni this summer, and we actually see some more work being put in, not the easiest NFL training camp, which they've had the last 2 years, that's what I'm looking for. I can't do the patience thing. And I understand you and knowing you long enough. I understand where you're coming from on that. But I think that's Andrew with his analyst hat on. That he tries not to do the fan thing. He tries to. I take it more from a fan aspect. I'm like, patience my ass. They're not getting it. They're not getting it from.
I'm just trying to stir the pot over.
Oh, I know.
You two have
they're
different
not getting
opinions,
it, and they're not
right
getting it from
each
me.
other.
They're not getting it from me.
Just trying to make this interesting a little bit.
That first month, I better see some offensive numbers that are eye popping. 26. I'm talking like 26 points.
Well, what if you see that and they're falling short and they're not winning?
That's going to be a problem also, because then I'm going to realize. But the offense, I'll blame the defense at that point.
But you have to take in all the other variables, and it just doesn't click. It doesn't always happen that quick, that instantaneous. It takes time.
Like if they lose games, if they're 2-2 after 4 games,
which is a possibility,
and they're averaging 26 points a game, 27 points a game, I'm not going to be blaming the offense. I'll blame the defense. Because if you score 26, 27 points a game, you're usually a top 5 or 6 offense in the NFL.
Right.
I'm not going to be blaming them.
But I mean, if you're blaming the defense, I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of young players playing. So that's something that I've heard a lot of folks clamoring about last season. You can't have it both ways. It's going to take time. There's going to be growing pains along the way. And especially when you're starting the season in Brazil against a formidable NFC opponent, with continuity on the coaching staff and personnel, it's a pretty good team.
See what he says, though?
Yeah.
Especially when you're starting the season in Brazil. Something that did not have to happen. Something you volunteered for. The Dallas Cowboys will now have not been out of the country for 11 seasons. They did. If you volunteer for something, they'll send you. Well, if you say, we're not going, you don't have to go. This was such a dumb decision.
Yeah, but the Cowboys haven't learned how to win in this country yet. That's why they're not leaving. They don't know how to win football games on American soil.
It was such a dumb decision.
I gotcha.
To agree to go to Brazil.
Well, here's the thing.
And to be like, we're so excited for this opportunity. We wanted to be in it.
It was made with other things in mind, outside of your ability to win that football game. And that doesn't
What about money?
seem smart.
If you took money being it,
right, like
self-promotion,
trying to build the brand, all of that, and you can absolutely make the argument it's not in the best interest of the football team winning games. But guess what? If they go down there and they win that game 30-21 or something, they take that plane flight home, and we're that's fine, exactly like we would have been.
Right.
I understand why you're saying this,
right.
And they don't have to be in this situation, but it's only the potential for a bad one. So it's not one that I'm going to get crazy. Like now, if they lose that game, well, they shouldn't have played there. And that'll be totally fair. I
told the guys the other day, so I wander over to Westgate Casino, which is the only casino that allows you to bet on every Eagles game. You can bet on every NFL game. They already have lines for all weeks. Eagles were just 2.5-point favorites Week 18 against the Giants at home. That tells me that the odds makers were saying that game's not going to mean a thing for the Eagles.
Right.
It'll all be locked up by then. That made me smile.
See?
That put a big smile on my face.
The long view, Johnny. The long view. Now, I know we've got an Eagles text to get to here. Someone wants to check in and ask a question about what's going on with the Birds. I do want to get another reaction on the big news of the day. Paul George signing with the Sixers. Also, Tyrese Maxi signs his max contract extension or agrees to it.
Take that, Tyrone.
I
we
mean,
got 2 stories today.
See, I wish they'd space it out. Couldn't we get one tomorrow? I need to get on the phone with Daryl Morey and tell him to sign somebody tomorrow. Bob's going to complain
that we got the 2 breaking stories today, too.
Bob's going to complain
He's
anyway.
He's going to give us grief.
We'll talk to him for the crossover coming up. But, Tom, what do we have on the text line as far as reaction?
Yeah, so no name here, unfortunately, but somebody says it is time to apologize to Josh Harris. He's the main reason this all happens because not many owners would be willing to risk the tax payment he just risked. He's one of maybe 10 owners in that boat. Great owner.
It's a great point. We talk about this with John Middleton all the time.
Great owner?
We talk about this with Jeffrey Lurie all the time. Not so much the great owner thing. I think that's just verbiage that was thrown in at the end of the text.
That's a bad. I was with the emailer
until the end.
I was with that till that texter till that last statement.
So right off the 2 words, and let's talk about the meat of that, which is just like you see Jeffrey Lurie do it and pay this money up front, and you give bonuses out, so it doesn't affect the salary cap the same way. John Middleton's willing to go into the luxury tax, no problem. I will say that part of the reason other teams were not in on Paul George is because not all teams are willing to go into that threshold, especially with the extra aprons coming in from the new CBA. It is a credit to – this is a top-to-bottom credit to the organization. Mm-hmm. The ownership did well. The front office did well. And also, something brought up, Tyrese Maxi did well because he could have gotten this extension last year.
He could have.
Was waiting. We talk about patience with the Eagles and the fan base. Tyrese Maxi showed patience. And also, he's waiting to actually do that so that the salary cap can be worked out before he signs that deal. So it's agreed to in principle, but he's also being organization first. So it takes everybody from top down to make a move like that happen. I think it was a great one for the Sixers. I don't think many people are disagreeing with that. I will say the great owner thing.
The great owner thing is
it might be a bridge too far.
No, it's absurd.
Strike that from the record.
That's absurd. If you don't say it to that point, that's the last part of it.
Good owner.
A good owner. Yeah, I'm all for good owner.
Cool.
I think he's a good owner.
We can agree on good owner. And we have an Eagles text as well, right, Tommy?
That we do. This is from Tom from Eagleville. Will Kellen Moore's offense open up Goddard more? And will we see that output closer to what we think his ceiling is?
Oh, this is a fastball for DiCecco.
Yeah, Tom from Eagleville, great question. Yeah, Dallas Goedert is my bounce-back player of the year. This is a player who's never had more than 59 receptions, never had more than 830 yards receiving in a season. I think that's going to change this year. I think he could have upwards of 850 to 900 yards. He's going to be utilized more in the intermediary levels of the field, but he's also going to be able to stretch the field and take advantage of his athleticism as well as his run after the catch. He might be the player who benefits most from this coaching addition.
I mean, that would be awesome because this offense could certainly use it, and the more guys you have to potentially quell that learning curve we talked about earlier in the segment, if Dallas Goedert's a big option, that makes it easier for you to still win while figuring things out. It's great. I'm happier now after hearing about the great spot that the Eagles are in than I was just knowing the Paul George news. This has been a great day. Andrew, thank you so much. It is a really good day
for
taking the time to join us.
Come back tomorrow, why don't you?
I was just going to say, what do you say we do this again?
We were going to vote on it.
Okay, I'm in favor.
I'm in. All right. So
we'll do it again?
You got 2 votes. Tom was voting against you, but it's 2-1.
I don't believe that. Tom would never do that.
No, never.
Tom was quick on the Andrew DiCecco train. I know that Tom has talked to Andrew for years, but thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you again tomorrow at 9. Coming up, we have the key 3, the best 3 minutes of today's show, and we'll also have our crossover with Bob Cooney, who I already know is worked himself into a lather over Paul George and this signing, and he's doing some research on other names, so we'll have to ask him about that. A lot of great stuff still to come. I'm Connor Thomas in for Andrew Salciunas, and we're back after this here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Now is the time to become a Fanatic MVP. Go right now to 975thefanatic.com/MVP and make sure you subscribe to The Fanatic.
not Andrew Salciunas. He is on his way to Lithuania for a much-deserved vacation. I'll have you for the week. John will be alongside me for the first 3 days, and then you get your 4th of July vacation.
Yeah, of course. I have to honor the country. I have to go see Chief Dan lead the 4th
parade?
of July parade.
Okay, cool.
And he carries flowers. He looks very feminine. He looks very feminine when he does it.
Hey, that's for the parade.
But it's good. It's
do
for the
whatever
parade.
you got to
yes,
do.
you know, the police chief, the fire chief with flowers. It's very strange.
And we're going to crush it for the days that you're here, and then I'll
It'll
take
be
care
fun.
of business while you guys are both out. It'll be a fun week, a lot of great content. We had some huge news already today with the Paul George signing, the Tyrese Maxi max extension. It's been one heck of a Fanatic Monday here, and Fanatic Monday is presented by Pierce Phelps Bryant Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors. Visit nopaybryant.com for flexible spending options on a new heating and cooling system. It's been a busy day. We got a lot of stuff that we got into, so why don't we listen back to some of it? It's time for the Kincade Salciunas Key 3.
Now, the Kincade Salciunas Key 3. Today's best.
We wake up to this.
Right?
The idea of big Sixers news breaking on July 1st, I'm all in.
And if you're wondering what this is, maybe you haven't seen the news. I don't think we're the only ones tired in the city of Philadelphia today because there were people up all night for a Paul George watch. We heard that there was going to be a meeting between the Sixers brass and Paul George late Sunday night out in L.A. Now, I don't think that 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. Eastern time counts as late Sunday night.
By the way, applause to the Sixers and Daryl Morey for bringing the party to him.
Yes, that's the way to do it.
Yes, be there. If you love somebody, show them you love them.
Yeah, and the Sixers we've known this since the offseason really got going. The Sixers have had their eyes set on Paul George.
There can be no argument made. You had a max contract slot that you were giving to Tobias Harris for the last few years that you now have Paul George in. You are better. You are better, bottom line. That's it. And I don't care if it's 2.5, 3 years of Paul George. The 2 years that we should hopefully get, are going to be distinctly better as far as an impact of what you got out of Tobias.
And our very own D-Lam, who joins us now. D, Paul George is a member of the Sixers.
I love it. I mean, let's just say if you're going to put him as your power forward, because they also are bringing Kelly Oubre back, you'd have Maxi, Gordon, Kelly as the small forward, Paul as the power forward. And if anybody wants to tell me that's not an upgrade from Tobias Harris, please give him my phone number and I'm happy to talk to him.
Now that you see the contract, know the move is happening, what's your immediate reaction to the Paul George news? And the biggest question is, was this the right move for the Philadelphia 76ers?
Let's talk about reality. And honestly, you got the best player available.
You did.
You got the best player available. And to me, I think it's as simple as saying you got Paul George where you had Tobias Harris.
Right.
And to me, at its base, that's the simplest thing, Common.
It's an incredible upgrade. Like, listen to this resume. I know what people think about when you hear Paul George. You hear about a guy that just turned 34. The injury problems are well documented, doesn't have a ring, hasn't been able to be the guy to get a franchise over the hump in his previous stops, whether it's LA, OKC, Indiana originally. But last year averages over 22 points a game, 5 boards, 3.5 assists. He's been on the all-defensive team 4 times. He's been an all-star 9 times. He's been a 6-time all-NBA player. This is a bona fide superstar caliber name that you're bringing in here. And now I know where he's at in his career.
Yeah, you're not getting him in his prime.
But you're getting a guy who had that done and still has that in small spurts. And now you have to cross your fingers and hope that he is healthy enough to make this dream a reality this year and 3 years after this year for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Philadelphia 76ers all-star guard Tyrese Maxi has agreed in principle on a 5-year, $204 million maximum contract extension.
Congratulations to Tyrese Maxi.
Couldn't be more deserved.
No, absolutely not. Better every year, adding another layer to his talents, constantly working on his game, great ambassador for the team.
Yes.
It's freaking awesome for Tyrese.
Paul George is a guy who has played alongside numerous superstars. He's played in tough places to play. Say what you want about the LA fan base and the passion, but basketball-wise, that is a high scrutiny place. Paul George has been around the block. He's a guy who knows what it's like to be on a team with championship-level aspirations, and while he hasn't carried a team there, he also hasn't really been the clear third option.
He's never been the third.
You can make the argument that with Kawhi and James Harden and him,
I think it was dual twos.
Right.
Dual twos.
But now he's in a spot where the bar has been set so low by his predecessor in Tobias Harris that you just kind of have to go out there and not disappear in spots where they need you. And I don't believe that Paul George is going to do that. Andrew DiCecco of Inside the Verge joins us.
I don't know that the CEO terminology is taken the way that it should. I think that's looked at sometimes as a stigma rather than what is actually a term that a lot of coaches in the NFL, they have. That's the branding. But he's going to be able to oversee and preside over the entire team.
Today's a day to be stupid excited about this move because this is arguably the biggest free agent signing. You could argue that this is the biggest free agent signing in Sixers franchise history.
No, it is.
Like,
it is.
To have this type of player.
And why argue it? There's no arguing. Like today, if you're looking to argue today, honestly, you're just going to sound stupid.
Well, we're looking to celebrate. And
let's celebrate a little bit today.
Well, we celebrated today, and that celebration is going to continue once middays rolls around. And here to preview that is our favorite? I don't know. He hasn't been giving us a lot of love in the promo late, Bobby.
Well, Raisin on that
I can't, everybody. Oh, yeah, Raisin for a day or two before he goes on vacation again. We got people going to Aruba, Vegas, Lithuania, Montovia. Everybody's just leaving, and I'm here. I'm here every day.
Okay.
Every day.
So what's your initial reaction? You woke up to the news.
Yeah.
What's your first
I actually woke up in the middle of the night and got the news.
Did
believe
you?
It or not. I did. I woke up at like 4:35 or something.
You used to be on
and
the
went
road
to my
by
phone.
then.
Well, you get anxious,
Yeah.
Yeah, good. They did what they had to do. You had to get one of the big names, and you got it. And Paul George is. This is a reason people are going to love him. He is the anti-Tobias Harris. He wants the ball at the end of a shot clock, at the end of a game. He wants to be the winner. He wants to take the ball to the hoop strong. All of those things that people were looking for in Tobias Harris, this guy has it. And so for that reason alone, people are going to really love him. They have a lot more to do, though.
I saw you going through 50 names out there.
Yeah, well, you have to. That's what you do, right? I mean, you're not set yet. You have 10 guys on the roster, but I don't look. I'm gonna start the show today by asking our listeners what would make you happier. Well, everybody's happy with this. What would make you happier? Mine, I have, and I'll give it. And they still have work to do. This is good. Some will label it great, but you don't really have a starting five right now. So you still have that to fill out.
That would be mine. Is if I listen to the show today, if I hear that one of the guys who was signed yesterday is not counted on to be a starter. That would make me happiest.
Yes.
In Kelly Oubre. So that would make me happiest if there was an actual better piece. Do you believe that they can afford to have a specialist in their now that they've got this three to build off of?
A specialist in the starting lineup?
Yes, that is someone who is not counted on to score. That could just be a clamp down defender or something like that.
You could do that. Yeah, absolutely. They have enough scoring. My God, these three average over 83 points a game in Embiid, Maxi, and George. So you have enough scoring. A rebounder, a wing defender. What is your goal? Are you looking towards Boston and saying, okay, we need to get another wing defender? Are you looking to make this team better? Like a Nico Batum, you kind of hate to say it, but I will say it. I thought that was kind of the glue piece that would have been perfect with this lineup right now.
Well, it was he's not coming back, not he's signing somewhere else. So does it change?
I think he's retiring, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
So we'll see. It's a fun time. Amy Fadul's going to be with us, and Keith Pompey from the Inquirer. He'll join us, let us know everything going on with the Sixers at 1 o'clock.
Well, you're not going anywhere, so
I am not.
Coming up at 10.
No.
Hey, our 76th show today, by the way.
Wow.
On the day of the 76ers.
And the Phillies won 7-6 yesterday.
And the Phillies won 7-6, and the Phillies magic number 72, by the way. Hey, support life-saving cancer research. Join us and our generous partner, the Davis CPA Group, and Ron Davis is renewing his Sixers season tickets. Make a donation to the AACR today. Go to 975thefanatic.com/AACR. I'm living proof that cancer research saves lives.
Well, hey, this isn't a one-day story, folks. The Sixers are busy. They're going to stay that way. So we're going to discuss that more tomorrow. Again, Andrew Salciunas out all week, so I'll be in the same chair with John Kincade to my left, Tom Alvord on the board, and we got plenty more. But that's our time. So we will talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Kincade and Salciunas.